Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Lipkove army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 560 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on another news day, as always.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And today has been a fairly interesting day. A lot's actually happened, both great, kind of okay, and also terrible. But the big news today, of course, did come from the Southern Front again, and we're going to be getting into that here in just a moment. But a real quick mention I would like to make before we get into tonight's news is that this is the last day of the war week. There are different ways the weeks are measured on this channel. One of them is the war week. There's the streaming week, which goes from Tuesday to Sunday every single week. And then there's the war week, which begins every single Friday, but ends every single, wait a minute, hang on, it's not Friday. It begins on Thursday, but it ends every single Wednesday night. Y'all might be wondering, why in the world are the war weeks on this channel structured that way, and why in the world do the maps revolve around such a weird dating system? Well, that's because the day one of the war weeks and their maps actually started on very day one of the war. And so it's actually a holdover from 560 days ago, when at this very moment, 560 days ago, the war would have begun right now. So that is why the war...
Man, I'll take your word for it. Good Lord. I'm lost.
Oh, well, hopefully I'm explaining it somewhat well out there somewhere. But if y'all want, this is the last day of this week for the map. And so if y'all want to see all of the bulletins and all the video and pictures that we got for the entire week on one map, this is the map for that. But moving on from that, because hopefully I explained that somewhat well, apparently Matty got lost in the weeds, and that's telling me I didn't do a good job at explaining that. But it is now time for us to move on down into the area of Robotyne. And it's a fairly interesting little occurrence that has happened today. The Russians have actually tried to counterattack the Ukrainian army that's been moving southwards in this area to stop their offensive momentum and to try and create some sort of a structured defensive line now that the Surovikin line has largely collapsed. From the information that we got today, this counterattack was completely stopped, thwarted, and did not make any meaningful ground for the Russian army, meaning that the Ukrainians are where they are at the beginning of this day as of right now, and the small counterattack attempt, which appears to have already ended as of this moment, has already failed. From what we understand, most of the counterattacking forces were a part of the VDV, which had just been moved into the area around 3 weeks ago, along the major highway leading from Tokmak up towards Novoprokopivka, and from what we understand, the 108th Air Assault Regiment, the 56th and 104th Air Assault Regiments were the three regiments that were involved in this counterattack operation. Starting from a launching point at Novoprokopivka, it appears to have been a multi-pronged counterattack spanning to the west, east, and center of Novoprokopivka that attempted to push directly onto the Ukrainian lines and then shove their front lines back into Robotyne, where the Ukrainians would then be on the defensive, or this offensive would stall until they were able to find out how to counteract the Russian forces in this area. We didn't get a lot of video and picture evidence out of this, but all of the frontline reports and battlefield reports that we got from both sides gave us a very good indication that this went poorly immediately from the start due to a breakdown in communications in between VDV forces, which then ultimately led to a loss of cohesion, and then the battle eventually subsided with the VDV withdrawing from the field and once again taking up defensive positions inside of the village in Novoprokopivka. Overall, that's technically considered a Ukrainian victory and a Russian loss. It is, of course, a larger part of the Battle of Robotyne at this point, considering that the battle hasn't moved all the way on from Robotyne, but it is still an interesting attempt by the Russians to stop Ukrainian frontline movement, but at this point it appears there is not going to be a good chance that the Russians will ever be able to stop the Ukrainian push south. But moving on into the only clips that we got from the area today, we did hear that while the Russians were counterattacking today, the Russian government finally made its first official statement on the Battle of Robotyne. Let me go and take y'all to the official statement here because it is funny to say the least. This is what they said. Russia tactically abandoned Robotyne. You see, Matthew...
Oh, now we know that can't be true because Russia doesn't do anything tactically.
Oh, you know, they don't do anything tactically at all. But Matthew, remember, it's the key word, tactically. If you throw tactically in front of anything, according to the keywords rule, lather on tactically in front of it, that will make it a-okay and absolutely acceptable as a frontline strategy. But let's read the exact details of what the Russian government said in this direct quote. The Russian army tactically abandoned this settlement because staying on a bare surface when there is no way to completely dig in doesn't generally make sense. And that was according to Yevgeny, Yevgeny Belitsky. I'm sorry, it's not Yevgeny Prigozhin, everyone. He's still dead. But anyways, that's what he said. And then he went on to also say, therefore the Russian army moved off into the hills. The problem with that statement is that there's no hills around Robotyne at all. There's not even any hills in Novoprokopivka, so moving off into the hills, that doesn't even make sense because there are no hills in the area. Another thing that is also pretty stupid to say is that it doesn't make any sense to hold a settlement. It's like, didn't y'all just fight an entire 9-month battle to take Bakhmut? And that's a settlement on open ground in the middle of the wide open air? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but that's largely how wars are fought, is taking towns and then holding them and then pushing to the next one. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to say that it made no strategic sense whatsoever to hold a town like any other and to abandon it to fight in entrenched positions. I mean, just dig trenches around the town, you know? Like, the whole statement was stupid. But nevertheless, the Russians did finally come out and admit today that they did abandon the town of Robotyne. And of course, through all of that fancy frou-frou talk of saying they tactically abandoned the place, we know that it really was because the Ukrainian counteroffensive finally forced the Russians to retreat from the town or otherwise be encircled. Moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, we also got about a 2-minute long clip of a Ukrainian soldier walking down a road in the area of the front line and showing us what the area south of Robotyne looks like. So really quickly, we're going to be getting into that video. All right, we can hear the music that plays in a Gatorade ad, and we could also see the a grad rocket of some kind, a UR-77's charge, it appears, sitting on the side of the road, and we see the Ukrainians marching down the small little dirt path. This dirt path is south
tactically walking at a high pace.
Actually, Matthew, this is called a tactical movement. And also that's what it's called, Matthew, when a soldier goes to the loo. It's called a tactical movement, a tactical bowel movement.
Real tactical.
Real trap. We make it look easy. Walk with your
boys.
And also we can see a load of TM-62 anti-tank mines lining the side of the road. So if a tank tries to drive off the road, y'all have a pretty good idea of what would happen to it. And we can see the Ukrainian soldier continuing to march forward over the tactical road with his tactical boots and tactical gear, of course with his tactical assault rifle. All very cool, and all big keywords to remember, everyone. Write that down. If you want anything to sound cool and military-esque, make sure to just put tactical in front of it. So hell, I'm going to say tactical military-esque because that's the proper way to say the word. And we can see them walking past this tactical minefield sign and towards the tactical forest. We can see more tactically placed TM62 tactical anti-tank mines, and we can also see the Ukrainian soldier tactically panning around his camera to give us the most tactical view of the tactical situation. I'm telling you, I'm about to have a stroke because I've said that word too many times. And remember, everyone, you can also get tactical t-shirts at theenforcerstore.com for your tactical needs. I'm just kidding, by the way. That was a merciless plug.
Dang, nice, a merciless plug you did there. Jeez.
Man, we need to get some pocket knives on the merch store so that way I can say it's a tactical knife like everyone says. It's mil-spec. Look, we're going to run it over with a car. Because for some reason, a knife had to survive being run over by a car. Look, but anyways, great to see them moving around. And we also got a pretty good look at those quote-unquote hills that are south of Robotyne, that is literally just a flat, wide-open plain. So, gotta say, very hilly looking, and it's great to know that the Russians tactically abandoned Robotyne to move into these beautiful hillscapes that are just south of the village. And of course, that's all sarcastic. Do you see a single hill in this area? It's a plain. But moving on from that and on into our next clips to the east of Verbove, well, to the east of Robotyne and inside of Verbove, we also got to see a Russian BTR in this area being hit by an FPV drone. And here comes the FPV drone. There's the BTR, and it rams right into it as the crew is unloading. Wait, we can see an explosion down here, actually.
Oh, it was a tactical fake.
Oh, wait a minute, nope. There we go.
Oh.
Oh, dude.
Oh, a tactical leap.
Dude, that was a tactical feint.
Oh, tactical crawl.
Man, and a tactical destruction. I gotta tell you, man, it's absolutely amazing to see that the 82nd Brigade was able to take out this BTR. And also, Matthew, I like the quick decision thinking that these Russians were doing launch. We can finally get out of our BTR and stretch our legs for a few moments, bled. And then this guy goes, oh, great. Poof. And then he goes, oh, never mind, I'm going back in. And then he's like, Vadim, get out. This is the last moment we're going to be able to pee before we get in there for another 3 days. Get out, Vadim. Get your stupid ass.
You'd think that they would have gotten the clue that there's probably one coming for their tank as well, and they probably should have jumped back inside real quick. They just kept standing at the door.
Well, no, one of them crawled all the way back in, and now they're both running for the hills. But there went another Russian BTR-80. This is not a normal BTR 60 that you would see with a machine gun turret, or just the BTR really without a turret. This is a BTR-80, and these are a little bit more rare in the Russian army than others. And also, whenever the Ukrainians capture these, they like to show them off because they do look kind of neat. I'll actually show y'all one because nobody really sees the BTR-80 variant of the APC much, but let me show it to y'all. So let me go get it. And here we go. This is probably the best picture I can get of the one with the 30mm autocannon for its turret. But there it is. And let me go get a better picture because that one's got no pixels. The pixels were sucked out of it due to its Soviet picture quality. But here is a BTR-80 with the 30mm autocannon turret. It's actually a pretty interesting upgrade and makes the firepower of the BTR-80 fairly similar to that of a BMP-2, but it still has relatively thin armor. However, there is a little bit of an advantage in this kind of APC and its relatively low firepower because it has a decent more amount of maneuverability. This thing is able to get onto higher speeds onto paved roads and also in unpaved areas as well as compared to its BMP counterparts. It's a fairly interesting APC, of course, relatively cheap and inexpensive. These things were made in the thousands, and these 30mm autocannon upgrades are fairly easy to come by as long as the Russians had money. The Ukrainians never had these. They only had the standard BTR, as they're calling it here, 80, but this model is usually called a BTR 60 with the 14.7 millimeter machine gun in its turret. But nevertheless, they are still interesting vehicles, and good to know that the Russians did lose one of them, because this is one of the rarer variants of the BTR-80 on the battlefield. But moving on from that, and out of the area of Verbove, at least right now, we're now going to be moving a little bit behind the lines to the area of Basan. Because you know something that happened today, Matthew, was that a ammunition depot got blown up, and it was absolutely Basan. Check it out.
Oh, man. Lovely fun. Lovely.
Dude, I had to make that one work. I was like, man, what the hell are you? Are you that song that goes, ow, I feel good? You literally did that, man.
That was my best Jim Carrey impression right there. You know how the rich people laugh, like a little meme?
Wait, no, let me do it right, man. Yeah, you normally laugh like, that's pretty funny. But when rich people laugh, they go, oh, you know, or something like that.
Oh, damn.
Man, that actually hurt my throat.
Got their speakers blown out. Good Lord. Yeah, my ears just got killed.
That hurt my throat so bad. I don't even think that was a laugh. I think that was more of a scream of terror. But anyways, also, by the way, did any of y'all hear the trap, well, not the trap remix, I don't even know what this is, dubstep? Yeah, that's dubstep for sure. But anyways, there's the ammunition depot going up. And I'm so sorry to everyone that just got their eardrums busted out. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. It was supposed to be more like the actual Jim Carrey clip. But then it just came out as some kind of a scream of absolute horror. And Sean has said, that sounded painful. It was. It actually hurt my throat very badly. But there we have it. A Russian ammo dump destroyed. And of course, wonderful to see. And once again, while the Russians have completely embargoed Western movies, at least at the moment, it is great to see that Russian soldiers are always getting early screenings of the movie Oppenheimer before its actual release inside of the Russian Federation. It's good to know that the Ukrainians do care about their media needs. Moving on from that and over into the area of Lipkove for just a quick moment, and then we'll move back into the area of Robotyne and go into a little bit of a frontline analysis. We also got to see a very interesting clip today. This is something we've never seen before, and really cool. So I'm not even going to explain it. You know, you can kind of tell what it is in the clip, but here it is.
Hey, it's my Dar.
It is.
Народний дрон F7 зовсім поряд.
Man, that helicopter looks like one of those cheap model like RC things you get from the mall, like flying around for some reason.
Yeah, it looks like one of those RC plane review videos right here, like the dubstep's going to be playing in the background and everything. But look at this. You know what that drone was going to do? It actually had a bomb attached to it, and it was going to kamikaze drone the helicopter. That was the plan. But sadly...
Dang, that thing would have to be going fast to catch that helicopter.
Yeah, so sadly, the thing tactically missed the helicopter, and then the helicopter, of course, traveling at like 120 miles an hour, just ended up outspeeding the drone, and the drone missed its chance to take out the helicopter. But it was so close. I mean, it was like 50 feet away from the helicopter. Probably the closest that we've ever seen an FPV drone ever get to a helicopter. But sadly, no dice. They weren't able to hit it. But it was a really cool video, to say the least, and a very solid attempt at trying to take down a Ka-52 with a drone. Now, imagine that, Matthew. Imagine taking down like a $60 million, well, it's more like a $35 million attack helicopter with a $2,000 drone. That probably would have been the most effective drone attack in the entirety of the war.
That was a far-fetched like attempt, though, because that thing is moving much faster than this drone by a long shot. But yeah, if they could have hit that, that'd have been a hell of a win. That'd been like taking that drone down with a stick.
Man, taking that drone down with a stick. Dude, that was a good video, man, when that guy sat there and threw the tiny twig, and then they went, you missed, and then he went, and he threw like a log at the thing, and it just took it on out. But anyways, a very interesting video, and great to see that Magyar's birds almost got a helicopter kill. Maybe they'll get a little more lucky next time, though. However, moving back on to the frontline situation in the Robotyne area, we have been seeing interesting developments, of course, with the Russian counterattack today, largely stopping any kind of forward frontline activity. As you can see over the past 24 hours, the frontline has not changed. Of course, Deep State's updating the amount of claimed territory that the Ukrainians have, which is being updated in green. The new captures are being highlighted in blue, but the Russian counteroffensive today did have an aim in stopping the Ukrainians from continuing to move south, at least for this day alone. Of course, that's not going to stop the Ukrainians, and based off of the Russians' deployment on the battlefield, we can once again get a fairly good idea of what they're planning for the Ukrainians to do and what they're hoping won't coalesce within the next few weeks. The Russians and most of their forces, specifically the VDV, are staged along the villages of Novoprokopivka, Ilchenkovy, and Solotka Balka. If we move on into this area and we look at it in satellite footage, there are some very interesting things to get from that kind of layout on the battlefield. And so let me go down here to Novoprokopivka, and let me zoom in really quickly, because y'all might be able to see it, although it's being covered in yellow. This is the only paved road in the entire area, unless we were to go all the way over, and let me make sure that I'm getting this correct, all the way over to Romanivsky and Polohi. That's really the only other paved road in this entire area, and there isn't one to the west for the large part, unless if you were to push all the way through Lipkove and Piatsky-Kantki, and then take Vasilivka and then start pushing down the E105, or down this highway here that we do not have a name for at the moment. So this is really the only paved highway, and the Russians appear to be stacking all of their chips onto holding the single highway. That's why you see on the force deployment map, all Russian forces are largely based around that area, and they're also based around Verbove as well. Take a look at this layout, or as the guy in that video would say, take a look at the headlock here. But anyways, let's go to the map, and let me show y'all how the specific layout is unfolding, at least from what we knew from the first of this month. As we can see, all of the VDV air assault regiments are lined up in between Kharkove and Novoprokopivka. We can also see some Russian forces to the western flank trying to hold the fields outside of Robotyne, probably to try and help the VDV not get outflanked and outmaneuvered on that side. And we can also see that the 234th Air Assault Regiment is set up as some kind of a small, quick reaction force for this open part of the front line. It appears that they'll be trying to fight the Ukrainians on that flank and kind of funnel them onto the highway at Novoprokopivka and try and make them run into the bulk of VDV forces that are in that area. Another interesting thing to notice as well is that the GRU, or the Spetsnaz more so, is also joining most of the motorized rifle units that are inside of Verbove, and they're attempting to help them to hold that village. The reason why there's an extra emphasis being put on Verbove as compared to any other part of the line is that if Ukrainian forces make it through Verbove and towards its south, the next paved highway is right there. So if they make it through Verbove, there is an entire chance that the Ukrainian armor could hop onto this highway and race directly to Tokmak, largely bypassing most of the VDV that is set up in Novoprokopivka, Ilchenkovy, and Solotka Balka, and also all the way down to Kharkove. That could also pose a major issue for Russian forces, especially with how things are developing at Verbove, and we already know that the Ukrainians now control about half of it at this time. So that's largely what the Russians are trying to do defensively, and if they're able to hold Verbove, and if they're able to funnel the Ukrainians into the VDV forces lining the highway, that will probably be the best case scenario for the Russian army at this moment. The Surovikin line has been breached, it's lost all of its defensive value at this point, but if they can continue to try and hold the Ukrainians and stop them from getting to Tokmak, and those are two valid and very good ways for them to try and do this at that point, they may be able to stop the Ukrainian offensive cold. The Ukrainians, of course, are going to counter this. It's going to only be natural that they try some kind of a counter, and their counter is going to be to punch through Verbove, considering that it's probably a weaker force, and make it onto the highway, heading literally all the way behind the Surovikin lines. It's directly behind all of it, and just race straight to Tokmak, freaking out the VDV, and then the VDV will have to retreat back into Tokmak and then try and quickly set up defenses, if they can set up any defenses whatsoever. The Ukrainians may also attempt to push once again through the Surovikin line south of Novoprokopivka like they already have, and then just push right onto the highway, forcing the VDV forces to the north, near Novoprokopivka, to retreat further down the highway, and then they just repeat that until they make it all the way down the highway. It's going to take a lot of time to do that, however. Their best bet and easiest one would probably just be to blow through the Russian forces at Verbove, and then move on to the highway that practically no Russian forces are on or defending at the moment. But that's largely our battlefield rundown at the moment, at least based off of the last time we saw a map locating Russian forces, but that's largely kind of the general overview of the entire area at the moment. And let me know what y'all think in the live chat. Do y'all think the Ukrainians are going to try and break through Verbove first, or do y'all think they're going to try and outflank VDV forces one piece at a time as they move down the major highway at Novoprokopivka? Because I'd be very interested to know what y'all think about that, because there's two pretty likely options here. They may even try both of them. So tell me, which axis do you think will probably work for them? The Verbove axis, Novoprokopivka, or both at the same time if it's possible? But moving on out of the Robotyne area and that frontline analysis, we're now going to be moving on into Germany for a quick moment, because I saw something interesting today that has thrown a lot of Russian shells directly onto their heads, and has caused them to be completely flabbergasted because they never saw this coming. You see, according to pro-Russians, ammunition and equipment is a finite thing, and it just doesn't ever get replenished. Like, for example, javelin missiles, javelin launchers, bombs, rockets, missiles, you name it. And one of those things that they really were making a big deal about a while ago was ammunition for the Gepard self-propelled anti-air gun. The Gepard is of a German design. It's a very interesting kind of anti-aircraft gun. Let me go over here and try and get a picture of it. And also let me put in Gepard tank, so that way hopefully it doesn't pull up as some kind of a weird anime character. But here is
Romania.
Oh yeah, we almost had a Romania right there. It's a good thing I pulled this stuff up off screen. But here is a Gepard anti-aircraft gun. They've been used very effectively so far in the war to shoot down cruise missiles and also drones as well. It's proven to be a be-all fix-all as far as things to get within close range of it within less than 2 miles. It's been a really good system, but the Russians and some people who act like they're pro-Ukrainians, but probably largely are trying to sow fear and dissent amongst pro-Ukrainians, you know, just for the hell of it, have been saying that, oh no, Gepard ammo is running out, and the only people who have it are the Swiss, and the Swiss are neutral. Who's going to give them the ammo? Oh my god! You know, and they're freaking everyone out, and then everyone freaked out, and then everyone acted like the Swiss were the only saviors of the Gepard anti-aircraft system and the only ones who could provide ammo. Well, that turned out to be a flat-out lie today. And, of course, to the great dismay of experts who have come onto this channel, when I've always just said, you know, ammunition is only a matter of spending the money to open up factories to produce the ammunition, and then people went, it's not that easy. Well, apparently Germany did do just that, and they've now opened up factories that are producing Gepard ammo, and we got pictures of the brand new ammo inside of the factories today. It's being produced by Rheinmetall, which is the large arms manufacturer for most main battle tank cannons in the Western world, and they also produce the original Gepard ammunition. We can see it being produced right here in mass inside of a factory. And it's clearly showing that all of the hype talk that people are always wanting to go about and saying that we don't have enough ammunition or it's running out is just blatantly untrue, because whenever there is a need for something, whenever there's a demand for something, there will always be someone that will create a supply for it. There is money to be made in that kind of business. And so it's wonderful to see that we are going to be watching the Gepard continuing to operate, because now the Germans are stepping up and actually producing the ammunition themselves. And I also got to say, I love the glossy paint that they're using on the casings. It just makes it stick out an extra bit.
It looks clean. Looks like so well finished in detail, I gotta say.
Oh yeah, it does.
Right up my alley.
And also, what's really interesting about this ammo is that this is not your normal high explosive proximity fuse. This is an armor-piercing discarding sabot. Like, dude, they're going to be shredding these things up. Like, armor-piercing discarding sabot. And let me go get an APDS shell on screen. And let me see if I can get this for y'all and show y'all what an armor-piercing discarding sabot looks like. So they kind of, yeah, actually, this is actually one of them right here. They look like this. It's this large-looking bolt thing that kind of looks like an arrow. And apparently they're going to be flinging that at planes and drones. For the most part, Gepards, when in an anti-aircraft role, they usually end up using some kind of a high-explosive fragmentation round. But this is armor-piercing discarding sabot. They are planning on the Shaheds having like 60 millimeters of armor at this point. But hey, whatever they're making is better than nothing, and still, these kinetic rounds, while probably having a small amount of explosive filler in them, will still do a great job at ensuring that these Gepards will keep functioning in Ukraine and continue to keep the skies safe. Orange Phoenix Brazier said the T stands for tracer, and that is correct. The T does stand for tracer, but largely I don't really care about the tracer stuff. You know, you can have a T on it all day long. Like, all the tracer does is help the gunner to see where the shells are going. Beyond that, it doesn't really change a lot about the qualities of the shell itself, rather than it becomes very visible for the gunner who's operating the piece. But still, nevertheless, very interesting to see them continuing to produce this equipment, and hopefully it will keep the skies safe, like we just said literally seconds ago. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from that great news from Germany. And if all of y'all could just get a little yay for Germany going in the live chat. I had to make sure to word that right, because I was about to sit there and like I was thinking, any pride for Germany usually falls within the Geschlechtvergleichment route, so we don't want it to be that kind of yay for Germany. But if y'all can just go, hey, thanks to Germany, I bet you all of the Germans in the chat would appreciate it, because it's great to see that the Germans are stepping up now, and they're actually doing proactive things like producing the ammo themselves. But with that,
Slava Germany.
oh.
Well, it is Germany.
moving on before we start stepping in some really bad doo-doo and on into the Black Sea. We also got a very interesting clip today, speaking of more internationally minded things, about how the Ukrainians are looking at the Black Sea situation with the Russians and what this means for the NATO countries that also have territorial waters inside of the Black Sea. And so here is the clip.
Black Sea region is becoming...
And also, by the way, I hate to tell you all this, but apparently United 24 doesn't always buy the license for its music. We actually got heavily copyrighted one time on just a stream about 3 days ago because of the music that played in one of their clips. So from here forward, I'm actually going to have to mute their clips and just read the subtitles. So sorry about that, but just letting y'all know in advance why the changes occurred. The Black Sea region is becoming an increasingly prominent theater of Russia's war in Ukraine. In the last month, Russia blocked maritime navigation for NATO member countries and boarded a civilian vessel of another NATO member country. This is state-sponsored piracy in international waters. Ukraine tried to push Russia out of the Black Sea. It damaged with sea drones the Sparta 4 vessel carrying artillery systems from the port of Novorossiysk to Syria. This is not a coincidence. It basically turned the peninsula into the staging area for the war in Syria. There are several more reasons why the Black Sea is important to Russia's aggressive plans in the Middle East region and Europe. You see something, Matthew? Is this crazy or what? They're now repeating the same things I've been saying the entire time about how Crimea allows the Black Sea Fleet and the rest of the Russian Navy to operate in the Middle East. Without that, the Russians really can't operate down there, and the Ukrainians are laying out. Finally, it's one of the first times I've ever heard anyone on a national level lay out why Crimea is important to the Russians and what they're using it for. But anyways...
How about that? You were right.
Dude, I was right. Can we get some people to stroke my ego? Can we? But I'm just kidding. But anyways, it is an essential strategic point to place cruise missiles. It is also an area suitable for oil and gas transport, Russia's geopolitical weapon. Since 2014, Russia slowly but surely annexed the Black Sea international waters. It denied access to exclusive economic zones of Romania, Bulgaria, and Georgia. 7 years ago, the Turkish President Erdogan warned NATO that Russia is turning the Black Sea into a Russian lake. And after the 2022 invasion, it only got worse. Is there a way to stop Russia? Yes, with the only tool it understands, forceful action. And what made the first step look like? In fact, it has already been taken. On the 16th and 17th of August, a container ship went from Odessa to Bosphorus. It traveled through the sovereign waters of Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey. This is one of the possible ways to restore the grain deal and gain full access to the international waters of the Black Sea. And the last one has to be the deoccupation of Crimea. And then the video immediately ends there on that cheery note, which of course is the final culmination of every Ukrainian counteroffensive that's going to be going on in the south, is retaking Crimea. But it's great to finally see that countries like Ukraine are now starting to point out the actual reason the Russians care about Crimea. And not to go through the whole spiel, but the Russians are largely friends with the Chinese, and the Chinese and the Russians have an invested interest, just like the United States, to largely bring the Middle East under Chinese or American control. Both sides are kind of competing for that. Whoever's side gets to control the Middle East will largely get to control who sells oil to where. And if the United States controls that, that means that we are able to ensure that the Chinese have less oil to work with, therefore driving up the prices for them and making their economic growth far slower. The exact same thing can happen to the United States and the rest of the Western world if the Chinese and the Russians are able to get complete and indomitable control over the Middle East within the next 5 to 10 years. The United States only has to ensure that we have control over the Middle East for about the next 30 years, approximately, because that will weather us through most of the difficulty and troubles where we can transfer over to other energy sources. Because, interestingly enough, have done a good bit of research on this. Oil extraction is becoming more expensive as time goes by. Of course, new oil deposits are being found every few years, but at the same time, while those are being found, the consumption of energy around the world continues to drastically rise, and everyone in the world counts on the exact same fuel to run their nation. That is oil. And with more people in the market wanting oil, the price will continuously be driven up, and because of that, the United States has to have an invested interest in keeping the prices low for us, because the lower the price of oil is, the lower the price of really everything else in the economy is, and that also helps us to continue a strong amount of economic growth. So to be able to weather that out and either find a way to create new energy, either through renewables, which I got to be honest with you all, I'm not really a big fan of renewables. They seem to be fairly unreliable, or nuclear energy of a kind. For example, nuclear fusion, which a major breakthrough was just made in that avenue last year, showing that nuclear fusion is actually possible because it did function, I believe, for around 15 seconds. Nuclear fusion did occur, and that is supposed to be a limitless and incredibly inexpensive energy source once it's finally developed into its full phase, which people are estimating will take about another 20 to 30 years. So if we can get all of that done and everything falls right into place, we'll be making sure to put the United States on an upper hand advantage, also the Europeans as well, against the Chinese and the Russians, and we'll be able to weather out the next 20 or 30 years successfully, while the Chinese and the Russians will be a good bit behind us. So that's largely the entire major game that everyone's playing at the moment. It revolves around the Middle East, but of course, to be a player in the Middle East, you've got to be able to, of course, get there, and the Russians' only way to get there consistently year-round is to control the port of Sevastopol and Crimea. So that's really the entire reason that the war in Ukraine is being fought right now, is because the Russians want control of that port, and once Ukraine was trying to join NATO, it freaked the Russians out, because obviously that would reinvigorate the Ukrainians trying to push the Russians out of Crimea and the Donbass, and then they would lose their only way to be in the Middle East. By the way, some people may be asking the question as well, you know, the Russians are poor, the Chinese are obviously a lot wealthier than they are, and also a lot more powerful at this point, clearly. Why aren't they in the Middle East? Well, they're trying, but it's a lot more difficult for China to get to the Middle East than it is the Russians. The Russians are just literally a hop, skip, and a jump away. The Chinese are a good bit away, and also they have to weather the seas of countries that are either indifferent or unfriendly to the Chinese for the most part, which could pose some major issues. They are there, however. They are currently lobbying and trying to get Iraq and Saudi Arabia to potentially join BRICS in the future, but it doesn't really appear to be going anywhere successfully, at least for now. But with that, I hope that does give a general overlay of the land on what's really going on in the world, and why the war is being fought, and why it's also important for us to make sure the Russians lose Crimea, and also why the Russians consider Crimea to be incredibly important, and also why they're trying to turn the Black Sea into a Russian lake for the most part. But with that, we are now going to be moving on out of that news and on into the Romanian news again, because another video was filmed just last night. Man, dude, the way you said that, it was like a weird, like, commercial bit. You're like, Romania. And I was like, what the hell? And also, my headset just died right there, weirdly enough, in the middle of the audio playing. But anyways, we're about to be getting into that clip in just a second. But before we do, there is a lot that has been going on in the live chat tonight. And a lot of y'all have actually been talking about some interesting stuff like Priggy Boy, you know, because he's still being talked about out there in the world. So Matthew, tell us, what's going on?
All right, so we have two really good polls to address, if I do say so myself. And the first one, which is currently running, says, Ukraine says they cannot confirm Prigozhin is dead. and an investigation is ongoing, and what are your thoughts? 36% said he's dead, give it up. 35% said he might still be alive. 15% said, that's kind of surprising to hear, and 14% said unsure. And I was kind of shocked to hear this, be perfectly honest, because I thought Ukraine was going to basically go with the official narrative and say that he is dead. But they're saying that they can't confirm that, which is obviously it leads to the possibility that he might be alive somewhere, and maybe he wasn't on the plane after all. Obviously, there's a ton of conspiracy theories going around about that, and it's very contentious, to say the least. But me personally, I'm going to say I'm unsure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, kind of think the guy's dead. You know, obviously he was in the jet. He got shot down. He's dead. And also, I have to ask Matthew, who is saying that they're investigating that? Is it the Ukrainian intelligence?
It's Ukrainian intelligence. And don't bash them, man. They've only made one big mistake, and that was it.
Well, you know, that mistake was pretty damn big about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I know someone's about to come to their defense and say, well, yeah, but they didn't know. Well, it's kind of their job to know. You know, it's kind of also...
I mean, look at the U.S. We made the biggest mistake ever. We said, you know, weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, and look how that turned out.
Oh, yeah, and I don't excuse that either. It was a huge slip-up. You would expect more from the intelligence agencies for sure, rather than just... you know, things that blatantly turned out to be untrue. Now, I have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in the Ukrainian government, but one thing that I've kind of started to learn to have an arm's length assumption of is what Ukrainian intelligence says, to be quite honest with you all. So, while they're saying they're currently investigating it, I'm going to honestly take that with a grain of salt. I'm pretty sure he's dead in 6 foot under the ground right next to his dad in some cemetery, because that's what we saw. I mean, you know, we saw the plane crash. He's dead. He didn't parachute out of it or anything. But with that, I hope that does largely address that fairly well. If y'all disagree, feel free to let me know and just do it politely, because we're civil folks here in the Lee Spring Army. But if y'all want to disagree, please feel free to do so, but please give an explanation why as well, why you would think he's alive, or why it may be up in the air. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And I see folks saying that wasn't weapons of mass destruction, it was weapons of mass deception. And I guess you could say that. I've never heard it phrased that way, but yeah, I guess that would be true after all, too. But moving on to our next poll, it says Romania has acknowledged a Russian drone struck their territory, and they call it severe, and what happens now? It looks like 47% said nothing will happen, 33% said a strong worded statement is coming soon, 12% said Article 4 will be invoked, and 8% said unsure. And on this one, I have to say that if Romania truly believes it is severe, that what happened by this drone flying into their territory and exploding on their territory was that bad, then they should respond to it. Simply doing nothing would look very weak. And at the minimum, I would say they could probably invoke Article 4 and at least get a NATO consultation to make it clear to Russia that they do take it seriously. And, you know, anything less than that to me looks like basically turning a blind eye to a very clear territorial violation. But Enforcer, what say you?
Now, from what I'm understanding, Matthew, if I'm taking this correctly, the Romanians initially said it didn't hit their territory, and then they said it did, but it didn't cause any damage, so we don't care. And now they're saying it matters to us, we care. Is that what they're doing?
Correct.
Interesting. You know, Matthew, I'm going to have to speak on your behalf here for just a quick moment. Where in the world are all the people who were so knowledgeable in saying that it didn't hit their territory and they weren't going to do anything? Because now they're acting like they are going to do something about it. To be honest with y'all, it's not going to turn into anything, because the United States is probably going to tell them to just be quiet about it and don't really concern themselves much. And then there'll be some backroom talks with the Russians to get the message across that if something like that happens again, there will be repercussions. But at the same time, I don't really see a lot coming out of it. But it's still funny to see, of course, all of it coming around. Now they're doing exactly what we said they were going to be doing about 3 days ago. Really what you said they were going to be doing about 3 days ago. And I gotta tell you.
Yes, indeed.
I gotta tell y'all something really quickly. I know y'all, it's something that y'all don't really get to see, because y'all just deal with us on a person-to-person basis. You come on and you watch the show. So really all you see is what we say. You don't really get to see a lot of the comments. But I've been going through our comment sections day after day, especially on the videos that Matthew's been making about the Romanian situation, and people would be in the comment section swearing up and down that that did not happen, and we were clickbaiting about the entire thing. And it's always funny to see that we're usually ahead of the news curve well enough by a day or a few days that it eventually comes out that the story that was being reported on this channel was the actual story, and then everyone's got to go and just most people backtrack and act like they didn't even say those statements, and then they go and, well, I mean, you know, obviously they're going to take this seriously, you know, and all that stuff. It's just fun to watch, you know, because we do this so much. We do this as a job, you know, and y'all support through the super chats, which y'all are seeing coming in right now, helps us to do this full time. And then we watch this stuff and we go, oh yeah, you know, 560 days that this is unfolded, this is what's going to happen. And then people just want to come in and act like we don't even know what we're talking about after doing this for 560 days. I got to give a Matthew.
You know the biggest thing I've seen people get wrong about this entire situation is they think Article 4 is the same thing as Article 5. The Article 4 is basically calling a meeting. Article 5 means we're going to World War. That's basically what that means. So huge difference between the two articles. So when I say Article 4, I simply mean they should convene a meeting of NATO and get together and talk about it. Article 5, that would be a little bit extreme since it did land in the woods. We saw some footage that I posted today on the Short War Summary where it showed it literally just blew up some trees. So nobody got hurt, but it's just the symbolism of sending in a drone and blowing up somebody's territory that needs to be addressed.
And I would agree with that completely. And also another thing I just saw in the live chat, and this is a very interesting point. I'm going to have to come to our defense here on this one. Derek B., who's a longtime viewer, he said, Enforcer, you guys jump on that news concerning the power plant and the uprising a month ago, so you reported it as breaking news and nothing happened. You can't have both ways. Just my opinion. We can have both ways because we learned with the nuclear attack. That's why I'm not taking Ukrainian intelligence's word at face value now. At that point, up until that moment, we had no reason to doubt whatsoever what the Ukrainian intelligence had been saying, because everything they had said up until that point had been 100% accurate until then. And then that was such a stir, especially for me, considering that we try and get our news as accurate to what's actually happening as possible, that now I don't really take Ukrainian intelligence for any worth at all behind the scenes. I largely discredit anything that they say until it's proven by actual events. So we learned on that one. The coup, I don't really know how you can say the coup was not breaking news, because considering that they raced all the way to Moscow and were just 2 hours away, and that's led to a furthering of the Russian government's weakness, that was breaking news. So, you know, that is what it is. I mean, you know, there's no defense to that. It was breaking news. But this, as far as Romania went, it was breaking news 100%. Because if a Russian bomb lands inside of a NATO country, even if it doesn't end up killing anyone and it just blows up in NATO territory, that is incredibly serious. That would be like in the Second World War, the United States dropping bombs on Switzerland, which did happen several times. And it ended up causing a pretty serious response. The Swiss ended up shooting down some American bombers over their airspace in 1944 because of that. So, you know, there's actual seriousness to what happened here that does quantify it as being breaking news. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, because that's why we called the nuclear reactor news breaking news, because we didn't have any reason to not think it was going to be breaking news. And then once we saw that all of that was largely fabrication, now I don't take Ukrainian intelligence at face value anymore, and now I largely have a lot of skepticism about what they say. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and that is our last poll for now. So, of course, it is time to move on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $22 donation from Kyle Leeson. And thank you very much, Kyle, for that very generous support. And he says, I felt too new to comment yesterday, but congrats on that 2-year anniversary, and I hope class is going well, and that Enforcer Matt stays on the mend. And I hope I stay on the mend too. And he says, keep up the great work and take a question from the chat. And thank you very much, Kyle, for the kind words as well.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Kyle. And also, thank you for congratulating us on a 2-year anniversary. You felt too new to comment? Nah, there's no such thing to me. I'm happy to have anyone in here, even if they just joined tonight. I'm more than happy to hear that folks are enjoying this channel and also are congratulating the entire channel, the Enforcer channel, on reaching 2 years. And I got to thank you so much for wishing that to us tonight while I just stutter my way through this entire thing. It means a lot to us that folks, both new and old to the channel, enjoyed enough that they would celebrate the 2-year anniversary. And I got to thank you so much for that. Also, class is going pretty good. It's kind of, I got to be honest, I'm gonna be completely honest and unfiltered. It's a bit of a drag because I have to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning every single day because the parking at this specific university we're going to is horrendous. So I have to get there at 8 in the morning to even get a parking spot, and then I stay there usually until about 1 or 3 in the afternoon. So it's large. It takes up so much time in the day, and then it takes an hour to get there and an hour to get back. But beyond that, the classes are good, and I feel like I'm doing pretty good in them. There's no grades or tests really in law school. It's just the final exam for each class, so who knows how good I'm doing until the final exam. But beyond that, been doing pretty good with the classes beyond that. It's just that the whole driving thing and having to get there at 8 in the morning every single morning is pretty tough. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and supporting us to help us to keep the great work up, and we will make sure to get a question from the live chat. But before we do, I got to thank you so much, Kyle, for, of course, enjoying this channel enough to support us, because folks like you help us to be able to do this as a job and help us to be able to make everything possible. If it wasn't for folks who supported this channel and threw in a super chat to keep this thing running, we wouldn't be able to, the Lee Spring Army wouldn't be a thing, because the Lee Spring Army exists through the channel. The Enforcer channel wouldn't be able to exist either, because we wouldn't be able to support ourselves doing this as a job. And you help us to make this thing possible, where we were able to do this for 2 years, and hopefully with y'all's continued support, we'll be able to continue to do this for years beyond this. And hopefully that will be the case. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and let's get a live chat.
All right, and we will get a live chat question. And also, to address what you just said about the parking and getting there early and everything, law school is actually not that bad, but I will admit, and I hope no professors or other students in my class are watching, but it gets kind of boring to some extent because you're reading case after case after case, and eventually you hear the same topic so many times over, you're like, okay, I think I've got that now. But, I'm probably just being a little bit, extra on that, because I'm sure some people in the class probably haven't gotten it and they need to get an extra case to understand it. But I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I think one case on per topic would probably do the trick for me.
I kind of would have to agree for the most part. But it's law school. I bet they're just going over it to be extremely thorough and to make sure that folks are getting it instead of just breezing through it. But sometimes it does get a little bit slow that way as well. But largely, my complaint is just how long I have to be there. I have to get there at 8 in the morning. That means I have to wake up at 5:30 to be able to get there by that time and to go to the first class. And then I just sit there, usually just going to like 2 or 3 classes, and I have to sit all the way until like 1 or 3 in the afternoon every single day. And it's not tough until it gets boring. Like, you're just sitting there for like 2 or 3 hours in between each class, just waiting for the next one. Oh man, that's actually tough. I'm not even gonna lie. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, let's get to that live chat.
And the live chat goes to Anonymous, who says, isn't it in Ukraine's interest to put doubt in the Russians' minds?
It is kind of in their interest, but if the Russian public thinks he's dead, and he is dead, it's not really that conducive to put doubt in their minds like that. It would be conducive to put doubt in their minds that the Wagner is going to do something. Now, that is meaningful doubt. That would actually start to cause some panic, or maybe even some feelings of partisanship with the Wagner that doesn't even really exist at this moment. Now, that would be a meaningful thing to do. But trying to say that that Prigozhin is still alive is kind of on the same area of saying that Tupac is still alive. It's not really accomplishing anything, rather than just trying to say that he may still be out there somewhere, which really doesn't help anything, or help out anyone for that matter. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But maybe the Ukrainians have some larger plan with this that I'm not seeing, but I can't really see any plan, at least in my opinion, coming out of it. But with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Mark Gagne said it's only been 2 weeks. No, it's been a month. I've been counting. It's been a whole month. It's not been bad, though. It's been enjoyable. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Flash1, who says, hey, hey there, here's some money to add to the pizza fund, and maybe they should have called it the Schlery. I'm scared to say that for some reason. I don't know what that means. Let me send it over to the enforcer real quick to get a check on that.
One second. Let's see.
So send it to your Discord.
I think. Oh, it's Suravikin.
Yeah, but what's that really mean though? It means something else now.
I don't know what that means, but that's supposed to be Suravikin. I'll read
Well,
it.
I should have called it the something Vikin line. Hick. Please answer a question from the chat and keep up the good work.
Man, hick. That's a word. That's a word we've heard a lot, Matthew. So much. Hick. Yeah. Oh, boy, we're going to go up into the mountains to get that moonshine. But it's moving on from that. Thank you so much for helping out the Pizza Fund Flash One and helping the channel to keep rolling because you're making it possible. You're making the dream work. I sound like a broken record saying that every single time, but I always want y'all to know that we greatly appreciate y'all's support because y'all help us to do this. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even playing. That's why I gotta thank y'all and say that to each and every one of y'all, because every single bit of support that y'all send in as a super chat makes this channel function. It actually keeps the gears turning and oils them, so that way we can keep doing this. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for helping out the Pizza Fund, because we will have some scrumptious pizza. And I think they maybe would want to call it that, but I don't really know what that means. I don't know what it means, Flash One, but still, thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to get a question from the live chat, and we will keep up the good work until this war ends. And so with that, let's get the live chat.
And the live chat goes to, excuse me, it goes to Art, who says, how do we know that Ukraine mentioning bombs at the nuclear plant didn't prevent a disaster?
Well, we largely know that it didn't prevent the nuclear disaster because when the IAEA inspectors got there were no bombs anywhere, except for some mines out on the perimeter, which, you know, are so far away from the power plant, they're not even really concerning. So that's largely why we know it didn't really prevent a disaster. And also, here's how it went. Let me just go and lay out the timeline to show you. Budanov says, oh my god, there's bombs, they're gonna blow up, they're blowing up tomorrow, they're blowing up in a few hours, oh my god, we're all going to die, look, there's bombs on the ceiling, okay, it's no big deal, don't worry, and that was it. Like, that's how it went. It went from the bombs are going to blow up in literally 16 hours to 16 to 18 hours later, they said, oh, there were never any bombs on the roof, you know, we just kind of overestimated that. And then they just went and moved on. They never brought it up again. So that's why we know there was no disaster being avoided there, because apparently there wasn't one. Because if the bombs were going to blow up, why didn't they blow up? You know, they said they actually gave a window. And I remember saying that window on stream. We were like, in 16 hours, we're either going to know whether that plant is blowing up or not. And then it just didn't blow up. And then literally right after that, Budanov then came out and said, oh yeah, it's no big deal. And it's like, well, hell, they couldn't have gotten the bombs off the roof in 3 hours since the timeline ended and you made that statement. So that's largely...
I think it might have been like those weapons of mass deception, kind of the same principle.
I think it may have been, and, you know, and of course, a lot of people say, oh, you know, don't bash him too much. And I usually don't bash people for mistakes. But a mistake like that, and a mistake like saying the Iraqis have yellow cake uranium and they're trying to produce a nuclear bomb, are the kind of mistakes that are serious enough that you then have to largely start discrediting and admonishing whoever did that or said that, because that is such a serious blunder. It's something that can't really be excused quite easily, like a YouTuber getting a mistake wrong or something like that. Like if a YouTuber gets something wrong, it's like, oh, I get it, you know, because, you know, it's easy to get things wrong, especially when you're trying to report things almost at the very hour it's happening. But
yeah, they're just YouTubers anyway.
Yeah, but with a Ukrainian intelligence ministry that has a budget of tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in agents all over the world that is also being fed satellite information and additional intelligence information from the United States and other Western countries to make a blunder like that, it's a lot more severe, in my opinion. And that's why I kind of continue to diss them for that, because clearly there was nothing that was happening. They just kind of made it up. But with that, I hope that does address that further well, at least how I took it. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Romanian news.
And this one goes to Ninja Machinist 89B, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much for that support. It said, so you can tactically eat some pizza.
Man,
Oh man, I'm telling you, tactically,
man, I'm
be
gonna be
crawling around with a pizza box.
Man, I'm going to be tactically butchering that pizza, man. They're going to be saying that this is some kind of a Geneva Convention violation with how I'm eating that pizza. But I got to thank you so much, Ninja Machinist 89 Bravo, for saying that we can tactically eat some pizza. Because I'm going to tactically eat my pizza with a tactical fork and knife and tactically insert the food into my eating orifice and then tactically chew it to then properly tactically masticate the food and then to tactically swallow the food and tactically digest the food for tactical purposes. I gotta thank you so much for that, because without that, we wouldn't be able to do all of the tactical things we've tactically done for such a long amount of tactical time. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And by the way, I feel like we should start a social movement, everyone, where we stop the word tactical from being used. It's such an overused word. You can go anywhere in, like, the wannabe military sphere, or hell, even the military sphere at this point, and it feels like the word tactical is used in literally every other word. Like, you can't just have a jet ski. It can't be, yes, the Special Forces use a jet ski. It's a tactical jet ski. Like, what's so tactical about this jet ski? Well, nothing. We didn't modify it, but it's a tactical jet ski.
The word tactical has probably made me buy more stuff than any other word, probably ever. Like that is a word for people like me. That's like an instant, like, oh, I gotta have that.
Dude, I honestly can. I literally avoid things that have the word tactical on it because I'm like, ew, cringe. You know, it's like you can use a word so much that it just loses all meaning. Like tactical. Like tactical used to actually have a meaning. It was a frontline terminology, usually for what a unit was doing and their actual maneuvers and stuff like that. But now it just covers everything. You know, it's like tactical boat, tactical plane, tactical gear, tactical rig. I mean, you know, like if you're using a chest rig in a military sense, I feel like you don't really need to qualify it with tactical. It already is tactical. It's the whole purpose of a chest rig. So why in the world do you have to call it a tactical chest rig? That's like calling a gun a tactical gun. What other kind of gun in a military world exists rather than one for tactical purposes? That's like saying I have a moving car. Well, do you have to say it's a moving car? I mean, it's kind of assumed that cars move, you know, unless it's like a restoration that looks like garbage and it then does move. I mean, like, that makes sense to say it's a movable car.
Not unless it's a Lotta. You don't call those moving. You call those stationary.
You call those stationary pill boxes. But yeah, I would have to say I just absolutely hate the word because tactical is just used so freaking much, just way too much. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And everyone's using tactical for everything. Tactical toilet paper. There is. Wait, hang on. Let me go pull that up. There is tactical toilet paper. Tactical toilet paper. I'm not even kidding. There's tactical toilet paper holders and crap like that.
Oh, that's sick.
Dude, that's so stupid. That's so stupid. Dude, it's the stupidest thing to me, man. Like, it just aggravates me. And look at all the memes about tactical this, tactical reload, all that crap. I just absolutely hate how tactical has become so overused that it's not even serious. It's a joke. Like, honestly, Matthew, we need to make a t-shirt that just says tactical shirt on it, and that's it. You know, or something like that. But anyways,
tactical. Man, I need the tactical toilet paper holder.
Maybe. I mean,
I gotta have it.
Man, I gotta be honest, man. If I see the word tactical in something, I'm ditching it. I will throw it out the window. It's just how it works for me. But anyways,
man, it's like putting German in front of something. You know, if they like say, "Oh, this is a German razor." Oh, what's it supposed to be better than every other razor out there?
Dude, you know, that's something that honestly the Germans get too much credit for. I mean, like, have y'all seen the transmission in a BMW? Like, that thing breaks about as much as the original transmissions for the German army broke down in World War II. There is no way that German engineering is superior. You know why America won World War II? Because American engineering is superior engineering. And I don't mean to say that just because I'm an American, but think about it. Really think about it for a minute. What vehicles are the most trusted for their reliability around the world? Japanese vehicles and American vehicles. Those are really the two that it comes down to. Because when you go to foreign countries, what do you see? You see Fords. You see them all over. And they're not considered crappy cars. No, they're considered fairly, a basic, it's not like a Rolls Royce or anything, but that damn thing will run until the end of time for some reason. And that's what I consider superior engineering. It's something that can run for an indefinite period of time, that is just so reliable that you don't really have to worry about the thing breaking down much. And I know that some people are going to be like, Ford sucks. Well, that's your opinion. I mean, largely Ford's okay. But anyways, we're going to be tactically moving on from this, because did we address the third tactical super chat of the night, Matthew?
Yes, we did.
I just had
that was what got us on that whole topic.
I just had to make sure, because it was all about tactical pizza. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And that rabbit hole was sponsored by none other than you. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the Romanian news, now that we have burned so much precious time with that rabbit hole. And we can see that another attack on the port of Renai happened just last night, and this was filmed from the port of Galati in Romania. Really quickly, I'll be showing y'all where that is, so that y'all have a good idea where this is relative to. So here's the port of Galati, right over here, and then there is the port of Renai. So it's being filmed from over here, looking across the river towards that direction. But nevertheless, here is the clip.
Deci gata, vine drona. Feriți-vă.
We can hear the woodpeckers firing into the sky, attempting to shoot the drone down.
Trebuie o luminiță mică. Nu, trebuie o luminiță mică să se vadă.
Dacă se aude, dar unde se aude?
Acum vine?
Acum trebuie să bubuie.
A trecut pe deasupra lor acum.
Uite pe aici.
Pe aici undeva, pe zor.
Dar nu se vede, mă.
Dar nu se vede că e mascată.
Uite deasupra aici se aude undeva. Ce pasăre, am crezut că e dronă.
Le-o dă.
Uite, au luat-o alții în vizor acum. Am pulă că se duce asta. Bubuie. Asta bubuie.
Păi bubuie. Tot în port le-o dă.
Tot în port pleacă.
În port se duce.
Gata, acum.
Gata. Uite. Direct în silos.
Oh. Glowing like Chernobyl out there or something.
M-a mișcat, uite, mai vine una.
Yeah, I tell you, this is some pretty wild stuff right here. When you see the anti-aircraft fire lighting up again.
Dă-te. Altă, mai mult.
Mai vine una.
Mai vine, se aude.
Mamă, ce...
N-are că astea sus.
And we hear the next drone flying in and over.
Auzi ce trage ăla.
Bă, dar nu se vede, frate.
Nu se vede. Gata, cade.
Asta cade undeva aici.
Ooh.
Oh. Those are Shahed drones?
They are.
George, și mai luat de mână.
Damn, what are they carrying?
Mai vine una.
Man, apparently some strong stuff. Like, I mean, that's a pretty big explosion right there. And it looks like they're attacking the port facilities again. Now you hear the next one coming in. We see some Ukrainian small arms fire once again trying to meet the third drone coming in. But we don't really know if that's going to be successful or not. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful. The third strike hit.
Hai că o să înceapă să sune.
Ia taci. Nu-i.
And now it's all quiet
Nu-i asta.
as the Romanians look on into the darkness towards the port, and then the video ends. But as you can see, unfortunately, 3 drones in that video were targeting the port of Renai, and all 3 ended up making it through the light air defenses and hit the port facilities again. We don't know what kind of damage was caused at the moment, but once again, another attack just straddling the Romanian-Ukrainian border and maybe even going inside of it for a small part of its flight path. Moving on from that, and on up into Kyiv, we also got to see that some rocket fragments were spotted around the city of Kyiv after the Russian missile attack from last night. We can see some of the charred remnants of these missiles that were shot down right here. We can also see that it ended up smoking a truck. Or actually 2 of them. Great to see the Ukrainians were able to shoot it down, but once again, some minimal damage was caused. Moving on into our location unknowns, we also got some pretty interesting clips from here as well. First off, showing a T-64BV of the Ukrainian army on exercise. It was just a neat montage of pictures of the T-64BVs in training, and I gotta say, the 92nd Brigade takes some absolutely incredible pictures. I mean, these things are straight up unequivocally fire and bussin'. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next one, where we saw a pickup MLRS of the Ukrainian army having a very rare rocket launch failure. Here's the clip. And really quickly, I'm going to rewind it because it's like Kerbal Space Program, but in real life.
Игорь, не выходь.
Well, let's watch that one more time.
What the hell?
There's the truck. There's the rocket. Rocket gets stuck in tube. Rocket then turns trunk into small, a small missile. I gotta admit, that was pretty funny to watch, and luckily no one was hurt by this, but still pretty crazy. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, where we also got to see a new Ukrainian Topaz drone. These are supposed to be used by Ukrainian forces on the front line relatively soon. They have a flight range of about 400 kilometers and a speed reaching up to 800 kilometers an hour. It can also fly at a flight ceiling of 6 kilometers and also fly as low as 50 meters. So it's an incredibly capable little drone. And hopefully we'll see this thing getting used on the Russian Federation here before long. Hopefully it won't be in this bright orange color, though, because I feel like that's going to make it a little easy to spot. But, and I'm just kidding, that's just the prototyping color. Of course, it'll be in another one, probably a gray color in service. But moving on from that neat little Topaz drone, we also got to see that the British Ministry of Defense has made a report on the situation from what they have been seeing. Russia's new school year has begun with a new curriculum incorporating both military skills and the Kremlin's view of the history of Ukraine. Russian President Putin personally held an open lesson with 30 school children on the first day of the term. Topics in the updated national history exam include Crimean reunification with Russia and the special military operation in Ukraine. Russia's parliament approved the curriculum last year. One element, the basics of life safety, is aimed towards senior students and includes a basic military training module. This will include handling Kalashnikovs, the use of hand grenades, uncrewed aerial vehicle operations, and battlefield first aid. Pupils may also be visited by Ukraine veterans, and all of this still doesn't help them to get a single usable recruit. The new curriculum serves 3 objectives: to indoctrinate students with the Kremlin rationale for the special military operation, instill students with a martial mindset, and reduce training timelines for onwards mobilization and deployment. The introduction of UAV operations indicates their evolving importance on the battlefield and the lessons learned about these systems directly from the conflict in Ukraine. But it appears that the Russian school system is going to be taking a little bit more of a martial turn. And I got to be honest with you, Matthew, I haven't seen a turn this martial since that marshal got shot out there in the Wild West by some cowboy. Moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report today. Matthew's like, all right, what am I supposed to do with that? But one Bobcat
they got one. Nice. I'm glad to see they got one of them. At least that one little unlucky bastard got taken out.
Dude, someone was in that Bobcat going, Eto robato, and it just got blown up, and that's the only one.
A little rat.
Oh, man. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, a rat. it's a rat. But anyways, 610 Russian soldiers lost, along with 12 armored personnel carriers, 15 supply trucks, 8 tanks, 36 artillery pieces, 7 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft system, and of course the Bobcat skid steer. All in all, a pretty good day in frontline losses for the Russian army. Of course, the Bobcat skid steers were a little low, but hey, you can't have greatness every single day in every single category. But moving on from the casualty report and on into the frontline situation, we've also been seeing some interesting developments in the Northeast, specifically with these Humvees driving off-road. They looked pretty cool doing it. And the music is, of course, the same track we've heard about a million times at this point. But we can see the Humvees driving...
Tactical gravel on tactical suspension.
With tactical music.
What kind of flag is that?
That is the flag of their unit. I have no idea. Like, I really don't know. But great to see. And moving on from the only clip we got from the northeastern area and moving on into the Kremenna woods, we also got a little clip today of the ongoing fighting that's happening within the Kremenna forest. It's a very short one. Oh, that's very copyrighted. But we can hear the bullets bouncing all around them if the audio was able to play, and we can also hear copyright lawyers coming our way, and now we can see the Ukrainians firing through some infrared. Juicy. We now see them advancing
I think that's
forward.
thermal.
Thermal, infrared, tomato. Someone's about to say different, but whatever. Oh, heavens. Oh, heavens. Heavens me. Tree just fell on him. But, with that, that's the end of the clip, and we see him getting into the back of the M113. But very interesting to see a small bit of the fighting in the Kremenna woods. Meanwhile, further behind the lines, we also got to see that a Ukrainian mortar round ended up hitting the both of them. We can see the both of them right up there near that telephone pole on the path. We can also see a little thing sparkling in the field right over here. And, oh, there they are. So now he's gotten up, and they're walking closer to each other to make sure that the spacing doesn't exist.
Look at that one guy down there running back.
Hey guys, guess what I just found? What did you find? I found the toilet. It's a great thing. We need to steal it so quick, man. Everyone come. Oh my god. Oh. Well, I guess that toilet is just for me now, Blade. Dude, that guy disappeared. Did you see that? He just phased out of reality down here. Man, there's so few pixels. He's just blending in with the grass down there. But the mortar round did end up being quite effective and took out a couple of them. Which means less Russians that the Ukrainians have to fight the next day. Moving on from that and that little clip, unfortunately, they will not be able to steal another toilet. We're now moving on down to the Bakhmut area. By the way, we're not showing frontline analysis because today there were no frontline advances at all from what we were able to assess. So we're just moving through the clips and showing y'all the Ukrainian actions of the day. But moving on into the area of Yakovlivka, we did get to see a story that is now surfacing from a former Wagner PMC that has been fairly disturbing, incredibly disturbing as a matter of fact. So here's the clip, and I'll be reading the translation. We gave an order, 2 grenades in the window, 2 in a doorway, and then clean up the survivors. Prigozhin himself. Prigozhin himself? Yes. What happened after you were given the order and sent to cleanse the village and film it with a drone? What happened in the village? In short, the cleansing ended up with me killing a lot of people, yes. How many elderly adults and children were among the killed? By the time we reached this 5-story building, we killed no less than 40 people. He's speaking of civilians, by the way, in case people aren't picking up. Then I asked him, what's next? And they said, after this, you'll go to the front line, but be ready to go in houses and kill women, children. Doesn't matter. They're Ukrainians. All of them must die. Then I asked him, what's next? Oh, sorry. For some reason, I thought the title had changed. One more time. This is important. We're losing the video feed. Can you repeat what they said? That when we take the towns and villages, when we take houses, we kill women and children. Before we enter, we need to throw a grenade and then enter. If there are children or women, wounded and not dead, we need to finish them off because they're Ukrainians. It doesn't matter, all must die. We're Wagner, we kill everyone. And of course, this is largely carrying on the stories of what happened months ago during the Battle of Bakhmut when Wagner forces were still being brought up to the lines to fight inside the city. But that's kind of giving you a little bit of a better idea of how sick and, let's see, what would be the best word? Irredeemable the Wagner unit is as an organization. And I gotta be honest with y'all, I'm all into the idea of using whatever to fight the Russian government and collapse them, even if it means that some of the people are somewhat questionable who are doing it. But at this point, I don't think any Russian unit inside of Ukraine, whether it be the Russian Volunteer Corps or the Freedom of Russia Legion, should be trying to recruit from these people because they are just sick. That is the bottom line. And also, once again, not to give this whole speech, I'm going to make it pretty quick. This is why we do laugh at Russian soldiers getting greased by the Ukrainians or absolutely laid out, because these are the kinds of Russians that are actually behind the scenes. Whether they wanted to be there or not, most of them end up becoming animals on the front lines and end up killing innocent civilians, women, children, and so on, just because they're there. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, where we also saw in the southern flank of Bakhmut today that the Ukrainians finally used the Baba Yaga drone and dropped an AT mine onto the Russians. There it goes.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, that looks so silly. Oh my lord. And that thing packs a hell of a punch.
Now that's the most effective thing that they've come up with yet.
And there goes the next one. I love it. Man.
Just a whole mine.
Just a whole freaking anti-tank mine.
It's even got nuclear on it, apparently.
Like Soing Scoob, I think it looks like Hiroshima. There's nothing
the
else
Russians be posting this as propaganda footage. Talking about, oh, they're using nuclear bombs, bliat. Oh dear.
Dude, Surovikin, not Surovikin, that guy, Solotovir, or whatever his name is, Volodymyr Soloviv, he's going to be on TV going, they're using nuclear bombs! Kill them all! You know, he'll be doing that in a minute. But I gotta say, man, Baba Yaga's just gotten even stronger. I love it. I love it. That's a really nice thing to see. Moving on from that, we also got to see in the village of Novoluhansk today that a strike occurred on a Russian supply base, which was very effective. There's the supply base right there. It's a very small one. And we can see them transferring munitions from one truck to the next. And oh, buddy. Oh, it's payday. It's payday. Oh, and they even got the Scooby-Doo van, too. Look. Dude, our first shell hit, and then the Scooby-Doo van went, like, Zoink Scoob, I think we're the only survivors. Ruh-roh, Raggy, second shell, double tap, and then they just take out the van.
Oh my goodness.
Man. Call the Ukrainian artillerist. Oh, I can't even make that joke because it's a modern joke about the modern American thing.
Ruh-roh, Raggy, it's a payday. They got laid out.
Ruh-roh, Raggy. Oh, wait, hang on. Like, Zoink Scoob, they're laying out people like it's some kind of a brothel. Ruh-roh, Raggy. I can't even go on with that one.
Get laid.
That was going to be too non-PG. But anyways, you know what? So, you know what? Jim Kalari said go for it. You know what? I'm gonna make the joke. We're only going to make the one joke because it's somewhat accurate. But then we're going to move on. So no one sit there and go insane in a live chat about this. Just take it for what it is. It is a joke. It's not supposed to be siding with anyone or doing anything. But I think this would be a pretty good one. Call this artillerist Barack Obama because this man be double tapping. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that little clip right there, and we're now going to be moving out of that part of the front line and behind the lines to the area of Konstantinivka, where we saw that well, actually, really quickly, I know that was a banger of a joke, but sadly, we're going to have to switch our tone here for a minute while Matthew's busting out laughing. But anyways,
well, damn, that's a hard transition. Jeez, man.
Let's see. Oh, wait, hang on. Hold up. Okay, hang on. Okay. Good. Hopefully people are taking that one good, because that one is that joke was actually a little bit on the gray zone there, but it looks like a lot of y'all liked it. But I would love to make jokes about all kinds of folks in the modern scene, but I know that people don't end up getting it. Like, I can make jokes on everyone, which is what we would do, but most people would end up just getting offended because they would just hear one about someone they like, and then, oh, how dare you, and then that would be how it goes. So, that's the only one we're ever making, period. So, and some people are saying they don't get it. Oh my lord! Okay, so in case y'all didn't know, I'll explain this really quickly. Back when drones like the Predator drone were just new in the U.S. military, it was common for us to use them a lot in Iraq and Afghanistan. And before that, we would usually just drop the one bomb onto someone, and then we would hope that that takes them out. But during the administration of that specific president, a new doctrine was come up with, which was called the double tap, which is where you would hit the target once, then you would wait about 20 minutes, and then you would hit it with a second bomb just to make sure to get them. So that's the story behind that joke. But anyways, moving on from that, we're going to be changing tones, unfortunately, here for this next story, because it was a little serious. A Russian missile attack ended up hitting the market inside of Konstantinivka today, and right now 17 Ukrainians are dead and another 31 of them are seriously injured. And so with that, here is the clip.
What?
Ось прильот, арта російських окупаційних військ сьогодні влучання на центральний ринок міста Константинівки. Но вы уже далеко, там машины нет.
Why'd they hit the market, though?
And no one knows why. It just ended up being the target for the missile, and it ended up striking directly into the middle of the market. This isn't the first time that this has happened. There was also an identical missile strike that happened in Kharkiv very early on in the war that also hit a line of people who were receiving emergency food rations due to food shortages inside of the city of Kharkiv, which also ended up killing 50 people back then. And this isn't, of course, those are just one of many attacks that were directed against the citizen of Ukraine outright. There's no way that the city square in the market inside of Konstantinivka can be justified as a military target. There were no military personnel there, and it wasn't even directed at a building. The missile exploded in the middle of the square. Once again, going directly after the Ukrainian citizenry and attempting to kill them outright. Moving on from that unfortunate news and moving on down into the direction of Staromanivka and Kremenchuk, we also got to see a Russian tank explode in this area. So hopefully this will make up a little bit for the unfortunate news that we just heard in Konstantinivka. We don't know if the Russian crew had bailed out of this tank or not when it just detonated. And so with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but great to see that the Ukrainians were able to knock out a T-80 BVM. Moving on from that and on into the next clip as well, near Poltavka, we also got to see some Ukrainians riding down the road on their way towards the front line. We can see them, of course, smiling and laughing, continuing to keep the morale high, as the Ukrainians usually do, as they make their way to the paved road. And now they have a choice to make a left or a right turn, and hopefully they'll make the right turn, pun intended. But with that, that's the end of the clip, and great to see them, of course, still in high spirits, our usual little morale check from the front. Moving on from that and into our next clip as well, near the area of Novomaichka, we also got to see a Russian checkpoint being hit multiple times by several different FPV drones over the course of a day. And we're going to be muting that because that's copyrighted. But we can see the drone coming on in and slamming right under the wheels of that truck at the checkpoint. We can now see the checkpoint is a burning blaze, and now the next drone comes in to make sure that it gets even worse, hitting directly onto the checkpoint building. Now here comes the third drone, which is now going for some kind of a fire truck that apparently was brought to the checkpoint. We can now see the fourth one coming in and also hitting the checkpoint as well. That was largely just a bad day for the Russians at that checkpoint. I mean, usually they're checking papers, but today their papers were getting checked as they were being put into the bags. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that little area in the Kherson front, and we're now going to be moving on to Kryvyi Rih, where we also got to see a cruise missile, a Russian one, being intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses. And so here goes the missile, and there goes the missile, if you get what I'm saying. And with that, that's the end of that clip right there. But of course, y'all know what it is. It's great to see it, great to see it, and great to see another Russian cruise missile being intercepted and destroyed. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 560 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the clip. Let me make sure to... Speech! And we should be set.
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні важкий день станом на цей час. У Констянтинівці, Донецької області, після удару російських терористів більше 30 поранених, 16 людей вбито. Мої співчуття усім, хто втратив рідних, хто втратив близьких. На місці удару працювали всі служби, розбирали завали, рятували людей. Я вдячний усім світі, хто засудив цей черговий прояв російського зла та підтримує Україну, наших людей. І дуже важливо, що відповіддю на російський терор була виключно ще більша консолідація світу. Кожен прояв такої консолідації реально допомагає рятувати життя. Сьогодні в Україні, в Києві, кілька вагомих міжнародних подій, візити партнерів, Данія, прем'єр-міністр Метте Фредеріксен, Сполучені Штати, держсекретар Блінкен, перші леді та джентльмени держав-партнерів, які взяли участь в цьогорічному саміті, і цей вже третій саміт перших леді та джентльменів, присвячений надзвичайно важливій і чутливій темі, а саме тому, як проходимо через цю війну, як наші серця і душі переживають війну. Тому як долати біль війни, ментальне здоров'я, ментальна стійкість людей – це те, що потребує роботи, так само, як і будь-який інший прояв нашої стійкості. Сьогодні звернувся до лідерів-учасників саміту Тримор'я, великого регіону, який є одним із джерел європейської міцності, Балтійське море, Чорне та Адріатика, всі країни нашої частини Європи. Саміт пройшов в Румунії. Я закликав усіх наших партнерів, наших сусідів і надалі берегти єдність в Європі. За цей день маємо нові оборонні домовленості, нові політичні, гуманітарні домовленості, готуємо нову міжнародну комунікацію, щоб цей тиждень з точки зору нашої зовнішньополітичної роботи ще додав активності, щоб наші воїни, увесь наш народ відчули більше посилення. Я дякую усім, хто допомагає і допомагатиме. Я дякую всім, чия сила українська. Слава Україні!
And with that...
And Hiram Slava.
And Hiram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that is also the beginning of the second half of this stream. We're now going to be moving into the fun times, the good times, the times that we all get to laugh, the times that we all get to joke around a little bit. It's going to be a good time, that's for sure. It's always a good time. It's a great time during the question segment. And y'all know what that means. It's fun at sea. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and jumping right into our last poll, it says the U.S. confirms it is sending depleted uranium ammo to Ukraine in the next package. And what are your thoughts? 79% said great, should have sent it earlier. 13% said, and this is for the angry folks out there, whatever, hurry up. 5% said unsure, and 3% said bad. That's like sending a nuke. And the 3% that said that is definitely not like sending a nuke. It's depleted. It's in the name. Depleted uranium ammo. It is only mildly radioactive. Only when it hits and crushes the substance, which releases the radioactivity, the dust, and it can be breathed in, which is very dangerous. But overall, it's generally considered somewhat safe. So I'm with the 80%. I think it's great. Should have sent it earlier. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta be honest with you. I don't think anyone should be worried about anyone breathing in the dust of an APFSDS shell, because if they're somehow in an area where an APFSDS shell ended up crushing itself where it turned into dust, I have a feeling they're not even alive anymore to really be caring about the dust and breathing it in, most likely because of overpressure and everything else involved with a shell puncturing the hull of a tank. So, gotta be honest, no, it's not at all like sending a nuke or anything like that. We should have sent those way earlier, as a matter of fact. I think we should have sent those at the beginning of the war, so that way the Russians could have a taste of the spicy round, because it is certainly a spicy boy. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, in my opinion, because I'd have to agree with the 79% of y'all that it should have certainly gotten there even earlier. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving into our Super Chat questions, we have a $33 donation from Hal Rose. And thank you very much, Hal, as always, for the very consistent support of the channel, if I can get that out. And Hal says the Baba Yagas were impressed by the drone's debut. Now they want to start a contest to determine who's the best and pick a question.
And thank you so much for the support, Hal Rose. And the Baba Yagas were very impressed by that drone's debut. All the Baba Yagas, man, they were going... And then they saw that thing and they all went, oh! I guess that thing beat every other Baba Yaga in existence. I mean, those
things are ugly.
Man, I gotta tell you, they really are ugly. Like, those Baba Yaga things in the chicken leg house, I mean... I don't know what the hell's wrong with Russians, man. Like, you know, you gotta just sit there and take a pause to think about the chicken leg house and be like, who the hell thought of that?
Yeah, what was it back in the day? Stanky?
Man, dude, that house be whipping the stankiest of legs, man. The chicken legs.
Yes.
Dude, that thing be hitting the gritty and everything. But, yeah, you know, I think the Baba Yagas are really impressed with the new one. It's just, you know, I think, Matthew, you know, that would be great. If a Ukrainian actually built, like, a little birdhouse thing that fit a Baba Yaga drone into it, and it had, like, fake chicken legs attached to it, I think that would be a funny meme to make about the Baba Yaga drones. But, anyways, thank you so much, once again, for support, Hal Rose. And I think that if they did have a contest to determine which Baba Yaga is the best Baba Yaga, it would certainly be the one that drops entire anti-tank mines. You just... Like, how the hell can you beat that kind of firepower? It's an entire anti-tank mine. Let me pull up something real quick. How much explosive... Let me just type in a TM62 landmine. So, TM62 mine. There we have it. So, here is our little culprit here. This is the mine that everyone uses. Let's see. Killing the... Oh, let's see here. Where... Help to clear the mines from roads. Okay, so this thing weighs 9.5 kilograms. It has an explosive content of about 17 pounds of TNT. Although sometimes combinations of RDX, TNT, and aluminum or amatol mixes are also used. So we can get a fairly good idea. This thing has got quite a bit of explosive behind it. 17 pounds of TNT is very powerful, incredibly powerful. So you're talking about a lot of force behind a single anti-tank mine. You can't beat that kind of Baba Yaga. Nothing else can. Like, the other ones are carrying little bomblets. This thing is carrying a 17-pound explosive bomb. That's a lot. That's a lot of firepower right there. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Hal Rose, and also helping this channel to keep on running, because folks who put in super chats to help this channel to keep on running, help us to make this thing possible, and also get y'all's names recognized on stream. And y'all help for everything to be possible with this stream. Y'all help us to be ad-free and sponsor-free on the live streams, where we can run this the way we want without having to worry about what people say or what people think. If you enjoy this channel, you have the ultimate choice in helping us to keep this thing running or not, and that's throwing in a super chat. And so thank you so much once again for the support, Halrose, and helping this channel to keep on running. And let's get a question from the live chat.
And the live chat question goes to Eugene Minton, who says inspectors were never allowed onto the roof to confirm anything about the units on the roof, or did they?
They were never allowed during the inspection, but the Ukrainians said, and this is what's interesting about it, they said up until the very moment, they said, oh, it's no big deal. They were saying there are bombs on the roof. There are clearly bombs on the roof. Oh my God, everyone, freak out. And then they literally went from that in hours to nothing happened. There's nothing serious going on there. And I wouldn't even worry about it. And so you are right about what you're saying. You know, they never were able to inspect the roof. The IAEA inspectors were. But at the same time, the Ukrainians kept the story so consistent up until literally the last minute that there's no way that the entire situation reversed itself in like 3 hours. There's just no way. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I don't know, we don't have any hardcore proof to confirm whether there were or weren't bombs on the roof. So there's an equal likelihood that there could have been bombs on the roof. You know, an argument can be made for that. But considering how quickly the Ukrainians reversed the story and they've never brought it up again, it's kind of made me disbelieve a lot of what Ukrainian intelligence has to say. Like, Ukrainian intelligence could say, oh, you know, like we think Prigozhin is alive and he's living in Tahiti. And at this point, I would go, I don't know about that. I'm going to have to see some proof. Because, and also someone's about to go, well, you didn't need proof for when the nuclear reactor thing was happening. Yeah, because we believed Ukrainian intelligence at the time. They never really, you know, just blatantly lied about a story like they did there. So everything that they said, we just took it at face value. And that's why it was breaking news when it was happening. Because going directly off of their words, the entirety of Eastern Europe was about to be bathed in nuclear rays from the reactors melting down. So, you know, that's why we took the story and just ran with it. But once we saw that you couldn't really take it for what it is, I've never actually reported on a story from Ukrainian intelligence since, to be honest. I have a pretty high news standard. You know, our standard is trying to be as accurate as possible, as quick as possible. And usually we're up to the mark on that. Like with the Romanian story, it's taken 3 days for the actual story, the way we reported it, to come out. And now it is, just like it did with the Polish story of the helicopters crossing the border and almost every other story. That's really the only one we got wrong, and it's because we sat there and took words at face value instead of picture and video evidence at face value. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, Hal Rose. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. He says, Bamuba. Matthew coughing, I did. Baba quack meow. Ba Kermit took something to Romania. Baba meow. No respect. Oh, Baba yaga. Said cough meow. Ba moo moo. Oh man, I'm telling you. Ba quack. Boink boink. Chicken noise. Cough. Moo ba woof. Oh, I'm telling you, Duncan got really light on the animal noises tonight. Oh, man.
Yeah, he did. I was, like, noticing that. Like, I thought they were over, and then you still kept going, though. And I was like, oh, wait, I thought they were shorter than that. But, oh, man, yeah, he did pull up Romania again. Well, you know, we all make mistakes in the heart of the passion, you know, I guess, maybe. But I gotta thank you so much once again for the amazing support, Duncan VR. You're helping this channel to keep on running. I don't even know how in the hell I'm doing this voice. It's hurting a great deal. So I'm gonna have to stop doing that because, oh my god, it's like my Adam's apple is exploding right now. But thank you for the support, and he did take it to Romania. He's going where other people go. I wish I could say
Romania.
Oh, I wish I could say like there's so many jokes. I'm going to be honest with y'all for a moment. There are so many jokes that I want to make about so many people all the time, but I have a
Romania. You know what they say about Romania?
No, I'm thinking about a specific person, Matthew, that had a lot to do with Romania and still has a lot to do with Romania. You know, the cars, the house, all that stuff, the jail. You know, there's so many people I want to make jokes on, but I can't because I have a lot of reservation and I respect our rule. But I can promise y'all this. like it the equal amount that I don't pick sides and I just say nothing about either side negatively, I could also just flip that on a dime and just start saying, like, just riffing on people on every side equally, because that would be a good bit of fun to me, but at the same time, I really rather enjoy not having people go, oh, constantly to jokes. So then we don't make jokes on anything. And so, now it's time to watch the thing, like with the former joke, about the artillery strike, Matthew. Some people were like, man, that's pretty messed up. And now that we made a reference a little bit to a specific person that has a bit to do with Romania, some people are going to be going, hey, man, that's kind of messed up about that. And that's why we don't do the jokes, because people like them when they're about the people they don't like, and then they don't like them when they like the people. I'm just into whether I like people or not. Like, making jokes is fun.
You're talking about tater tots?
Oh, yeah, tater tots. That's what we're talking about. But anyways, and George just there's so many people to rip on. And yes, there are so many people to rip on. Like, the world is rife of them all the time. I mean, hell, we're people that can be ripped on pretty easily, and a lot of y'all do. But it's just so tough. It's so tough. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support Duncan VR and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because folks like you make this thing possible. And I thank you so much for throwing in the traditional animal noises tonight, because that is a channel icon at this point. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and also shout out to Marc-Andre Burnett for putting in a 2 Canadian and putting. I thought, I'll be totally honest, when I first looked at that symbol, I thought it was flicking me off for a minute, but it's actually a #1 sign. And thank you very much, Marc-Andre Burnett, for the support as always, and we do appreciate it very much. And thanks for not flipping me off. And also, up next, we have a $20 super chat from Capable Glober, who says, a national ignition facility, not for fusion power, and it's our strategic nuclear testing without detonating one underground. Russian initiators likely inert after years of neglect by corruption to yachts. Saudis cut production again.
And thank you so much for the support and also sharing that little bit of info with us, Capable Glober. And also, I would say that I don't think I said anything about the National Ignition Facility, but we did hear that a fusion power test, and this was, I think, like, what was it, Matthew, like 6 months ago, that a fusion power test had finally proven successful, and they actually had a fusion reaction for a short amount of time.
Yeah, it was only 15 nanoseconds, though, I think.
But it was still progress, and that is progress in the right direction. To be honest with y'all, if I was the president, I would divert billions of dollars into research and development of that, because the faster we are able to move towards the direction of nuclear fusion, which is incredibly safe, by the way, and also creates, from what we understand theoretically, a massive amount of power, relatively cheap for the amount produced, that would be something that would take the United States to the next level. Imagine electricity being practically worthless. Think of that. Think about all of the economic activity that could be spurred from that, just from that one development. You could entirely cut oil dependence altogether. You wouldn't, and of course, some people are going to say that that would probably devastate the oil industry, and yeah, you would be right. But at the same time, imagine all of the industry, well, practically every other industry but the oil industry would end up just blowing up, because there would be no limits at that point, really. I mean, there basically wouldn't be, because if power production is cheap and, well, so cheap it's just pennies per megawatt, hell, you could do anything at that point, and you could really set the country up for the next, I would say, not the next industrial revolution, but the next technological revolution for certain. It would put the United States so far above its rivals, like China, that we wouldn't even be able to compare with them anymore. We would once again be back up on our own level, where we're not even talking about the Chinese eking up close to us. But
man, somebody would fall out of windows so fast if that actually happened. Like that would not be allowed to happen. I can tell you right now.
Oh, it would be, because you could say the same thing about the folks who own the massive horse breeding companies way back in the day. When the car started to replace the horse, a lot of companies ended up losing their shirts because of that. And everyone went, oh, you can't have the automobile, starting to replace entire industries that have grown up around the horse. And at the end, it ended up replacing them, and the economy was far better off for it than it is now. The steam train ended up doing that too. I mean, it's just It's kind of like the movement of society and technology. Honestly, there's not going to be anyone falling out of windows, in my opinion, because if that was the case, they probably wouldn't allow electric cars, and yet we're seeing that electric cars are becoming a common thing nowadays. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on the first part of that. And also, the Russians, initiators, unfortunately, I gotta be honest, I'm gonna have to declare ignorance on what you mean by initiators. If you're talking about in the nuclear weapons, most likely, because they don't put a lot of funding into their military in the first place, and also, the Saudis will cut production again. That's what they do. That's what OPEC countries just love to do, is just mess with the national market. So, yeah, I would agree with that. And that's also why I think that we should be investing heavily in other kinds of energy. And honestly, you know, I'll be honest with y'all here. I'll tell y'all a little bit about my policy if I was the president right now. Forget every other kind of renewable energy, hydroelectric, wind, solar. Wind and solar, in my opinion, are gimmicks. Nuclear is the way to go if you're talking about that kind of energy field. It's the best, it's the cheapest, it's the most efficient, it's the safest. And also, new reactor designs are coming out that not just thorium reactors would be incredibly safe, but uranium reactors using uranium-235, which is weapons-grade uranium, is also incredibly safe now because there are more design features built in that make them completely fail-safe for the most part. Of course, nothing will be absolutely fail-safe, but if there was even a meltdown-like situation to occur at a modern nuclear reactor design, there are safety features in place that shut down the reactor, separate all of the elements, so that way a full meltdown can occur. Not even a partial one can largely occur at that point. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Troy Wilson, who puts in a $20 donation and says Prigozhin might have pulled off a DB Koopa.
And, who the hell is DB Koopa? I'm trying to think.
That man that jumped out of that commercial aircraft, you know, he caused a stink on the aircraft, like hijacking, and then he jumped out with like a parachute or something, and he went missing and never be found again.
Yeah, he got like some money or something, and then he parachuted out of the back of the jet. Oh, yeah. Now I remember that. Maybe he did. I'm doubting. We never saw a shoot when the plane was crashing, but you know, it's not out of the question. I mean, maybe. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. A really interesting idea there. You're right. DB Cooper did do that successfully and was never found. So maybe Priggy could do that. But then again, he's kind of on the plumper side, and also you can't mistake that face anywhere. He looks like the Glibgo Glob Glob. But anyways, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, Troy Wilson. And thank you so much for supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Aaron Cooper, who says, thank you for the work and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much, Aaron Cooper, for being an absolute legend and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Aaron. Slava Ukraine. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sean Tyler, who puts in a $20 donation, And Sean says Russia was planning a nuclear event because Ukraine was vocal about it, and China made a public statement against it, which was the first time that they had spoken out against Russia, and China speaking out made Russia abandon its plan.
And I thank you for the support, Sean Tyler. And let's see, Russia was planning a nuclear event, was vocal, but China made a public. Let's see. Unfortunately, I'm not understanding what situation this is in reference to. If you're talking about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, I would actually have to say, but there wasn't really a lot of a Chinese statement made about that. It was kind of like a passing one, like, oh no, don't do it. And then that was about it. They didn't really say a lot beyond that, but maybe that's why. But then again, the reversal was just so quick, it gave me whiplash. And usually situations like that, they occur over a week. Like the de-escalation occurs over a week, and it doesn't just occur over a few hours after it was supposed to have blown up. But with that, I thank you so much for support. That may actually be the reason why it didn't happen, and there were bombs on the roof. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well with the information we got. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Carl Elwell. And he says, there are reports of gas being used up north by Le Mans soldiers, completing of hard to breathe with minty taste. Any comments? Minty.
I'm trying to, you know,
Sounds like maybe a chemical weapon, to be honest, but that's kind of extreme.
yeah, it kind of sounds like a chemical weapon. I haven't heard about that, but that may be a chemical weapon that was used on him, because usually chemical weapons make the air have a bit of an odd taste if you actually have the misfortune of inhaling any of it. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can, because it does largely sound like that would possibly be chemical weapons. But, you know, of course, if it was, I feel like the response in the news on that would have been major. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Snow White, who puts in a 20 and says, "Hi, LLC Angels. And would it be a military malpractice? Excuse me, military malpractice to Volvako land at the edge of Russian border? And if the LSA was in this war, where would you put your efforts, and how would we make our moves?"
And thank you so much for the support, Snow White, and also great to have you with us tonight. I got to thank you for helping out this channel massively to keep us running, because folks like you do make it possible, especially when things continuously are chipping at this channel. And I got to thank you for supporting it. And also, let's see, would it be military malpractice to Volvako land at the edge of the Russian border? What does Volvako mean, Matthew? Do you know what that means?
I'm not really sure.
If that means to take land at the edge of the Russian border, I don't really think that would be military malpractice, but it would be certainly giving the Russians a good excuse to throw a tactical nuke at Ukraine, and no one could really do anything about it, because they could say our existence is being threatened because of their push into Russia. And I know that people are going to say that's unfair to the Ukrainians, because the Russians have been doing that to them for 2 years nearly now. And that would be true. It's unfair, but Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons and the Russians do, so they get to do stupid stuff like that and then get away with it if they can make a proper excuse. If the LSA was in this war, I would largely focus my efforts on that southern front area. And I think I actually went through a great detailed battle analysis of this yesterday, but I would largely have a two-pronged offensive heading towards Crimea. One from across the Dnieper River near Kherson, and of course the one heading towards Tokmak. Take Tokmak, cut off the land bridge, fire onto it, and then have this force over here, while most of the Russians are distracted near Melitopol and Tokmak, have this force then just burst forward from its position and try and take the land bridge at Armyansk. By that point, the Russians in this area, in Kherson and Zaporizhia, would be so badly cut off and so desperately in need of supplies, they would most likely have to withdraw or end up surrendering a large amount of those forces over to the Ukrainian army. So that would be the way I would fight it at the moment. And then, of course, taking Crimea, there's really no other way to do it than a frontal assault directly into the peninsula without a lot of flanking maneuvers or amphibious invasions, because it's not possible for Ukraine. So that would be a pretty tough one to just pull off at all. At that point, though, you could probably help yourself out a lot by just flat out destroying the Kerch Bridge, both the railroad and bridge spans and multiple segments of it, so that way the Russians could never hope to get enough supplies into Crimea, and then it would become an untenable position. So that would be how I would go about the war, because the honest thing is that the Donbass would probably just be given back if Russia loses Crimea, because there would be no point in them trying to fight and hold that area, because it doesn't actually hold any strategic value for the Russians. Someone's about to say that there's metal deposits and natural gas, but the Russians have so much natural gas, the deposits inside of Ukraine don't really mean much for them. And also the steel industry and the lead industry that's inside of the Donbass isn't really that important to them either. They more so did that to try and justify the excuse that they were trying to save the Russian people from Ukraine, because there are some ethnic Russian populations in the Donbass and Crimea in some fairly larger amounts. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Snow White, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Junebug72, who puts in an $18 donation and said, "I missed any school update if you shared one, and how is law school so far? Slava Ukraine, and thank you both for breaking so much down, and good evening." And good evening to you.
And thank you so much for the support. And the law school update is that it's been going pretty good. It's just that it's very long hours, especially due to how long I usually have to wait. Like, I get at school, I don't get at school at 8, I actually get at school around 7, or 7:30, depending, because, you know, who knows what the traffic will be like. And then I sit there and wait for the class to start, earliest one at 8, and then usually have to sit there and wait until about 2 o'clock or 1 in the afternoon to be able to leave. Well, actually, it's 2 or 3, usually, for me to be able to leave. And they're incredibly long days for only like 2 to 3 classes a day most of the time. and it just eats me alive that I have to waste so many hours of time in between classes that I could be using to do other things like the YouTube channel. So that would be largely my take on Moscow. Beyond that, it's been pretty fine. The folks there are pretty nice. You know, everyone's really nice to each other. The professors are pretty good. Classes are interesting, but sometimes they can, you know, get a little redundant because they cover the same thing 3 or 4 times, but I get why. But beyond that, it's been going pretty good. It's been going on for a whole month, too, which is the craziest part about it, that it's already been a month of law school, and the stream is still running. We actually thought the stream would end, and I remember, Matthew, when we said that it may possibly get rolled back a little bit to, like, the weekends. There was one guy out there going, "Oh, it's a payday. Everyone throw a parade. Oh, man, they're quitting. Oh, look at
It
him."
didn't work out for him, did it?
No.
And also, he didn't grow any in channel viewership or anything. He went down.
Actually, he lost. Yeah, he lost some. A couple of hundred from what we can tell.
Man.
Oh, man. Oh, Romania. But anyways, yeah, you know, that's largely how it's been going in law school, but it's something we have to do to be able to pass the bar and become lawyers. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that answers your question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Dunn, who puts in a 10 and says, "Yup, Slava Ukraine."
And yup, and Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Gopnik, Blue, something like that, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Hello, I am Ukrainian refugee in U.S. I am sad because I left to avoid draft, but now I have a job and I can at least support. I'm sorry for my country, but I am only what my mama has. And thank you for what you do."
And thank you so much for the support, Kopnik, and helping the channel to keep on running. And also, it's unfortunate to hear that she had to leave Ukraine. But, you know, if you were able to leave Ukraine, you know, that is what it is. You could do what you do. But thank you so much for enjoying this channel and supporting us there. You can keep this thing running because your support helps this channel to keep on going. Would y'all believe it that we've been saying that statement behind our super chats for 560 days? Well, actually about 540 days because we got monetized like 20 days into it. But we've been saying that for 540 days. And there are people out there who try and spread the story that we lie and say that the super chats actually go into helping Ukraine. And, you know, we made that clear for so long about how the money's divvied up, like the Sunday fundraisers are to help Ukraine, the weekdays are for us, you know, and it's always weird to have folks, you know, very confused about that, you know, because it hit me right there when you said, "Thank you for what you do." It's like, you know, folks who send in super chats, they know where the support's going, and then people try and act like they don't. You know, like we haven't been saying the same thing behind every single super chat for 540 days, which is, thank you, you're helping this channel to keep on rolling. You're helping us to do this as a job. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, and I hope we were able to address that fairly well. And I wouldn't be sorry for your country. I would actually be very proud and happy of it because it's been doing an amazing job defending itself and helping itself to stay alive. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and the next one goes to CK Ball. And that was totally unintentional to sound like the other fella. All right. Moving on to this one, we had that 5 from CK Bold, who says, "Take a live chat question." And we will. And thank you for the support very much. And the live chat question goes to Private Public 77, who says, "Why are World War II style AA searchlights not a thing anymore? Is it because of radar and night vision? And they could be good against drones?" ?
That's a great question. We actually have seen World War II style spotlights being used around some cities like Kyiv because it's really the only way sometimes to spot the drones. So they are in use, and they have appeared to have been fairly effective for some anti-aircraft guns like Quad Maxims that we've also seen being reintroduced in the service in this war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much, CK Bull, for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hawk 1986 ×2, who puts in a 5 and says, "I am tactically sending a tactical donation to be used tactically for Ukraine to tactically destroy a Russian Bobcat in the most tactically way."
And I gotta thank you so much for your tactical super chat and helping us to tactically run this channel as we tactically ensure that we will have a tactical superiority and being able to tactically operate our tactical jobs. Of course,
Tactical.
I'm greatly appreciative as I sit here with my tactical t-shirt and tactical shorts on and drink out of my tactical styrofoam cup with the tactical juice inside of it. And the juice is in fact tactical. We don't drink. It is all non-alcoholic. It's nothing, actually. I'm not even drinking anything right now. I'm trying to make that joke work somehow, though. But still, I gotta thank you so much for the tactical support and helping us to tactically keep the channel running, because without tactical viewers like you, we wouldn't be able to make this tactically feasible. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mr. Drake333, who puts in a 5 and says, "Good work and regards from Helsingør, Denmark. I can report no ships with drunk Russian captains have tactically got stuck on the ground for now."
And thank you so much for the support. And let's see if we can find your town. What's it spelled like, Matthew?
It's Helsingør.
Helsingør, Denmark. Here we go.
There, yeah, right there.
Oh, there it is. It's just north of Copenhagen, the finest city in the world. But let's go on. You know what I did right there. That was deliberate. But anyways, oh, dude, if the pictures would load, this is unequivocally bussin'. It's fire. Look at that, dude. That's actually really pretty.
It looks Norway.
Man, you mean Danish? That's it.
Yes, that too.
Man, it looks Norway. The hell? It's Denmark, man. But I gotta say, really beautiful place. Okay, all right. Apparently we got Romania there, but not that kind of Romania, but it was another kind of Romania.
Oh man.
Oh man, just pretend y'all didn't see that. Oh man, oh gee.
Unintentional.
That was totally unintentional. But anyways.
Yuck.
Oh god. But anyways, oh man, it gives me crack every time, man. Crack out of oh man. Oh, you get a crack. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for being a Lee Spring Army viewer all the way from the tactical country of tactical Denmark. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to SYI Tiger at 907, who puts in a 5 and says, "Did you hear about poison vodka that the Russians stole?"
Oh, yes. That was a thing that happened way early in the war. That was like in March of 2022, the first like poison vodka came around and they were pissed. But yes, I did hear about it, and it was funny every single time. It even gets funnier each time, as you'd think they'd learn, but then they don't. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from an absolute channel legend. Hit it, Matthew.
And this one goes to Walter A. Lakota Jr., who puts in a $20 donation, and he says, "Aloha, the Enforcer Matt in LSA from OG LSN Bosun. And if I was in charge of this war," and he put "if" in big quotation marks, he said, "I would pull a sleeper move and have pressure in the south and do a feint drive in Kherson, while I'll do a full drive on in the east."
And that's a pretty interesting idea. And I would also have to thank you for the support, Walter. And also being our OG Ellison bosun. Now, I would say that's a pretty interesting idea and probably would end up being very successful because Russian forces in the northeastern area are a lot less dense in force size. So that's certainly something that could be done. But it would be a little tough to justify that move because it's still not going for the prize, which is Crimea. Because if Crimea is taken, I'm having a pretty good assumption the Russians would give up the Donbass just to get out of the war at that point because there's really nothing worth of value for them to hold. But you could probably do that and take a lot more ground, a lot more successfully than a push straight to Crimea, which is the end goal of the whole war. So with that, I got to thank you so much for the support, Walter E. Lakota, and I think that is a very good idea. I feel like that one actually would be more successful in taking ground than mine would be. So with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, Walter E. Lakota, for being here with us tonight, being our Merchant Marine, and also our Hawaii Fun Facts guy. And with that, on to the next one.
And this one goes to Craig Platel, who puts in a 5 and says, "BTR with 30mm gun is BTR 82-A. With just 14.5mm gun, it's BTR 80. BTR 60 is old 60s variant. BTR 70 bridges design between BTR 60 and BTR 80.
And I thank you so much for the support, Craig Platel. And I was pretty certain that the BTR-82 was that APC, but I stopped saying that because a while ago, people just started to call them the BTR-80. And I was like, am I getting that wrong? I'm glad to know that, well, I'm actually kind of sad to know that I actually corrected myself and then got it wrong, because I used to call it the BTR-82, but then everyone just kept on calling them BTR-80s, and I was like, maybe my identification is wrong, and they are all just BTR-80s. But with that, thank you so much for clarifying that, Craig Patel, and I will make sure to go back to what I used to say way before I ended up correcting myself and then getting it wrong. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says it's sickening that you can see a child running around right where the artillery shell landed in the market, and can't imagine why Russia operates that way.
I can't imagine why either. It is completely sickening. And I don't know why they have to go out of their way to target citizens directly. There's no military targets there. You know, you can't even justify this at all. You can't justify any of these attacks ever. And I don't know what makes them think that's a smart move, because all that does is enrage the public and make them want to support Ukraine even further. But with that, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steve Alexander, who puts in a 5 and says, in today's address, Russian spokesperson Peskov says they destroyed 8 HIMARS, 6 B-17s, 20 Challenger 2, and the kindergarten they bombed was a NATO HQ.
And also, they stubbed Zelensky's toe. Don't forget that one. That was the most important one. But they probably are. That's probably not that far off, all joking aside. That's probably not that far off from what they actually stated they got today. Because that guy always gets up there looking like the dude from A Christmas Story, you know, with like the glasses that's going to shoot his eye out. And then he goes, the Российской Federation Army was able to destroy 500 Abrams, 200 Leopards, 50 Big Macs, 1 side of fries, 6 milkshakes. You know, and he sits there and just does that, and it's like, dude, you know that's just all lies. They don't even have that much stuff in the whole army. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Marc-Andre Brunette yet again. And thank you once again, Mark, for that support. And we have a 5 from Craig Platel, who says transmission costs are 50% of electric service, so cost can't go down lower than those costs.
That's an interesting statement right there, Craig Platel. And I got to thank you so much for sharing that with us. But I live in Fantasyland. I'm just kidding. I don't live in Fantasyland. I do thank you for sharing that with me. But I'm having a feeling that if electricity can be cheaply produced, I feel like eventually, due to that cheaply produced electricity, the materials that the electric lines are made out of will end up becoming cheaper as well, so maintenance may decrease in that cost to run the power. But that is a very interesting suggestion, and one I have not actually taken in consideration up until you just told me about that. And so, thank you for sharing that little tidbit of knowledge with me, Craig Patel. You're teaching me a good bit tonight and correcting some things that I corrected and then got wrong. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, and Tight Lines LSO, who says Morse code says Russia keeps on the losing streak even when they try to push back. Long live the LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And that's the sound of money. And you all got that dead on the nail. That was the exact Morse code message of the night. And they're even losing when they're trying to push. And they losing when they losing, too. And so with that, thank you all for deciphering that Morse code message again for the 560th day of the war. And once again, getting it dead on. And so with that, we are, of course, going to take a moment to recognize Marion Deemert, who just threw in a $20 super chat with a laughing face. And that was it. There was no comment. It was just... And I got to thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you who consistently support this channel help to carry the entire weight of us being able to run this thing. Of course, the entire channel runs on viewer support. It's really the only channel on YouTube that runs that way. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to continuously do this and continuously pump out our videos and everything else that we do on this channel as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And due to time constraints tonight, sadly, we're only going to be able to get to about 3 live chats, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. But before we get to that, we also have another super chat. Take it away, Matthew.
This one is from Scott Jensen, who puts in a $20 donation and says, with this daily attrition rate, is it not wise for the UAF to just keep it up for as long as they produce these daily numbers, and the orcs are bound to run out of equipment to fight with? Slava Ukraine and Igor.
And thank you so much for the support, Scott Jensen. And theoretically, you are absolutely correct. They could just sit there and whittle down the Russian army until there's really nothing left, and then the war ends. But the problem is that wars are incredibly expensive. And therefore, it becomes a major incentive, because of that extreme cost, that every single nation try to end a war as fast as it can, even if it could just wait the war out. That's what ended up killing the Germans in the First World War, is that they tried to just sit there and wait it out. And it appeared, in the end, their economy couldn't wait out the war. Their army could. Another thing that Ukraine has to consider is that if they tried to conduct a war of attrition like that, where they just dragged the war out and didn't really do much in frontline progress, that may end up waning Western support, because a lot of people would say the war is never going to end, so why are we supporting it? So the Ukrainians are incentivized for that reason, and also due to just the exorbitant cost of fighting a war, to try and find ways to end it as soon as possible. And that's also why the Russians are always trying to find ways to end it as soon as possible as well, although they've largely lost that initiative since about the first month. So that is largely why they can't do that, but theoretically, if we take economics out of the equation entirely, they could just attrit the Russian army into giving up. And that would probably take years, but it is something they could do. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Scott Jensen. That was an amazing question right there. And I hope that my answer was a fairly good one. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Star Hunter, who says, will North Korea trade Russians ammo for nuclear technology?
No, I don't think they will, because the North Koreans at this point, from what we understand, have about the same kind of nuclear technology that the Soviets would have had during the 70s and the 80s. And they couldn't really do a lot more with more advanced information and technological tips, because they don't really possess the ability, and it's taken a lot for them to even produce the nuclear weapons they have right now. So I have a feeling they're probably just going to be trading weapons for food, kind of like they've been doing with the Chinese for a good bit with their coal. They trade all of their raw materials for food from the Chinese. They don't even really make any money off of those trade agreements. It's just trying to feed the population to keep them working, so that way the whole thing kind of keeps itself going, but barely. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the second to last one of the night.
And this one goes to Drunky Monkey, who says, y'all just tested a Minuteman, and I hear you do this every year, or is it special?
I think the United States does test a Minuteman every year. I don't think it has a nuclear warhead on it. I think we've largely stopped nuclear detonations in testing, but I do believe that we did launch a Minuteman, and that's a pretty regular annual occurrence, just to see how they work, and if they are still working. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I understand, and it is that time of the night. We are on to the final question. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is C.D. Kennedy, who says, have you heard that the Wagner has joined the Ukraine forces in their fight?
I have heard a little bit about some fighters joining. I haven't heard about the whole Wagner unit running over to the Ukrainian side. And also considering the kind of atrocious war criminals they are, killing innocent civilians inside of Ukraine, while I get the concept of using groups that are somewhat questionable, like the Russian Volunteer Corps, to fight against the Russian Federation, I don't like the idea of the Wagner, which are war criminals. They are equivalent to the SS Death's Head from Nazi Germany in World War II, joining the Ukrainian side and the Russian Volunteer Corps to then fight against the Russians. Honestly, I think they're such an irreprehensible group due to the atrocity that they've committed against the Ukrainian citizenry. They shouldn't be allowed to step foot inside of Ukraine under any conditions because of what they've done to the people of Ukraine. Now, the Russian Volunteer Corps, that's another story. People always talk about that. That's another story. The enemy of the enemy is the friend, and they are largely doing harm to the Russian government. So that's more of a different story. But as far as Wagner, I would not want them there. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. As Neil Vizanant threw in a 2 and said tactical nope, and you were correct for a few seconds. But it is the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching the stream. It's been an absolute honor knowing that we've been able to run the news for 6.1 thousand of y'all tonight. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe, because it helps this channel to keep on running, and it also keeps you apprised of the news. We run nightly live streams 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night, and put out daily war summaries, short war summaries that are around 10 to 15 minutes long, practically every single day. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time as usual. And Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The